Elena Cross stood frozen in her husband's mansion as Damian Blackwell, Chicago's most feared crime lord, announced to a room full of powerful men that she had failed him. "My wife is Barren," he declared, his voice cutting through champagne-soaked laughter. "But fortunately, I have an heir." Sierra Vale, barely 23, stepped forward holding a newborn boy. Elena's world shattered as Damian took the child, lifting him high. "My son. My legacy." But Elena clutched something in her trembling hand, a folded medical document 3 years old, a document that proved everything was a lie. Before we begin, if you want to see how this story ends, hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The chandeliers in Damian Blackwell's Gold Coast mansion blazed like 1,000 accusatory eyes. Elena Cross stood at the edge of the grand ballroom, her champagne flute trembling in fingers that had forgotten how to be still. She wore the emerald gown Damian had selected that morning, not asked her to wear, but selected, laid out on the bed like a uniform for a soldier about to walk into battle. She hadn't known it was a battle, not until now. "Ladies and gentlemen," Damian's voice boomed across the marble floors and up into the vaulted ceiling where oil paintings of dead men in gilded frames looked down with the same cold judgment her husband wore so easily. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight." Elena's stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Damian never thanked anyone. He stood at the center of the room, commanding it the way he commanded everything, with violence barely restrained beneath Italian tailoring. At 45, Damian Blackwell was a man sculpted by brutality and refined by blood money. His salt and pepper hair was slicked back from a face that would have been handsome if not for the cruelty that lived in every angle of it. His eyes, dark as crude oil, swept the room with proprietorial satisfaction. Around him, Chicago's underworld elite raised their glasses. Men who ran guns, drugs, construction rackets, unions. Women who knew better than to ask questions. This was Damian's court, and they were all his subjects. Elena was his queen, or had been. "My wife and I have been married for 5 years," Damian continued, and Elena's heart stopped. He never talked about their marriage in public, never acknowledged her beyond the necessary appearances. 5 long years. Laughter rippled through the crowd, knowing, masculine, cruel. Elena's fingers tightened on her glass. "Elena has been a devoted wife," Damian said, turning to look directly at her across 30 feet of polished marble that might as well have been an ocean. "She's been patient, supportive, everything a man could ask for." His smile was a blade. "Everything except fertile." The word landed like a gunshot. Elena felt the room tilt, felt 200 eyes turn toward her like searchlights finding an escaped prisoner. Heat flooded her face, her throat, her chest. The emerald gown suddenly felt like it was strangling her. "Unfortunately," Damian continued, his voice carrying that same casual tone he used when ordering someone's execution, "my wife cannot give me children, cannot give me an heir, and a man in my position needs legacy." "Damian," Elena's voice cracked. She took a step forward, but a hand caught her arm. Marcus Chen, Damian's head of security, stood beside her like a shadow that had suddenly become solid. His grip was gentle, but absolute. "Let him finish, Mrs. Blackwell," Marcus murmured. "But fortunately," Damian said, spreading his arms wide in a gesture of magnanimous triumph, "I have been blessed." The crowd shifted, parting like the Red Sea, and through that parting walked Sierra Vale. Elena had seen her before, glimpses in hallways, reflections in windows, a flash of honey-blonde hair disappearing around corners. The household staff whispered about her. The girl Damian kept in the West Wing, the girl who was always gone before Elena came downstairs in the morning. Sierra was 23 years old and looked like she'd been manufactured in some laboratory designed to create male fantasy. Long legs, delicate features, wide blue eyes that might have been innocent once but now carried the calculated emptiness of someone who had learned exactly what those eyes were worth. She wore white. Of course she wore white. And in her arms, wrapped in a blanket of softest cashmere, was a baby. "This," Damian said, crossing to Sierra and taking the infant with the careful reverence of a man handling something precious for the first time in his violent life, "is my son." The baby was perhaps 3 months old, with a shock of dark hair and features still soft with newborn vulnerability. He made a small sound, and Damien's face transformed into something Elena had never seen before. Love. Real, genuine love. For someone who wasn't her. His name is Dante, Damien announced, lifting the child high above his head while the crowd erupted in applause. Dante Blackwell, my heir, my legacy, my future. Elena couldn't breathe. The room spun. She was going to be sick, going to collapse, going to die right here on this marble floor while everyone watched and applauded her destruction. Elena! Damien's voice cut through the roaring in her ears. He was looking at her now, the baby cradled in one arm while his other hand gestured dismissively. You're dismissed. Marcus will help you upstairs. I've had your things packed. The words took a moment to penetrate. Packed. What? Elena whispered. Your things, Damien repeated, slower now, like he was speaking to a child or an idiot. Clothes, jewelry, the jewelry I gave you anyway. You'll find everything ready in the guest suite. Marcus has arranged a car for the morning. You're throwing me out? Elena's voice rose, breaking on the last word. In front of everyone, after 5 years? I'm releasing you from a marriage that has served neither of us, Damien said smoothly. You should be grateful. I could have been far less generous. Generous? The word was a slap. I gave you everything, Elena said, her voice shaking with rage and humiliation and something that felt like grief. I gave up my life for you. My friends, my family, my... Your what? Damien interrupted, his smile sharpening. Your job at that pathetic gallery? Your studio apartment in Logan Square? Please, Elena, I gave you a palace. I gave you status. I gave you a life you could never have achieved on your own. He shifted the baby slightly, and Dante made a small cooing sound. And in return, you gave me nothing. Not even the one thing I actually needed. The crowd was silent now, watching with the hungry attention of Romans at the Colosseum. Elena felt something break inside her chest, something that had been holding her together for 5 years of cold beds and colder silences, of dinners eaten alone while Damien conducted business in rooms she wasn't allowed to enter, of pretending she didn't hear the whispers or see the pitying looks from staff who knew exactly what kind of marriage this was. I want my mother's locket, Elena said quietly. Damien's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? My mother's locket. Elena straightened her spine, forcing her chin up even as tears burned behind her eyes. The silver one she left me. It's the only thing I have of hers. I want it back. Everything in this house belongs to me, Damien said, including that tarnished piece of sentiment you were so fond of crying over. It was my mother's, and now it's mine. Damien turned away, dismissing her with the gesture. Marcus, escort Mrs. Blackwell upstairs. Make sure she doesn't wander. Marcus's grip on Elena's arm tightened fractionally. Ma'am, please. Elena looked around the room desperately, searching for an ally, a friendly face, anyone who might protest this public execution of her dignity. She found nothing but averted eyes and knowing smiles. These people had always known what she was, what Damien had made her. A trophy. A placeholder. A wife in name only, waiting to be discarded the moment something better came along. And something better had come along. Sierra stood beside Damien now, her hand on his arm, her smile radiant with victory. She looked at Elena with those wide blue eyes, and there wasn't even malice there, just indifference. The same indifference someone might show a piece of furniture being removed to make room for a newer model. Come on, Mrs. Blackwell, Marcus said quietly. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Elena let him guide her toward the grand staircase. Each step felt like walking to a gallows. Behind her, the party resumed, conversation swelling, laughter returning, glasses clinking. Already they were forgetting her. Already she was erased. At the top of the stairs, Marcus finally released her arm. His dark eyes held something that might have been sympathy. I'm sorry, he said. Elena didn't respond. What was there to say? He left her standing in the hallway outside the guest suite, a room she'd never slept in during 5 years of marriage because she'd always occupied the mistress's chambers adjacent to Damien's, a room for visitors, for strangers, for people who didn't belong. Elena pushed open the door and found her life reduced to 3 suitcases and a garment bag. Efficient, thorough. Someone had gone through her things and divided them cleanly. What was hers? What was Damien's? What could be taken? What must stay? She walked to the nearest suitcase and opened it with shaking hands, clothes mostly. Simple things she'd brought into the marriage before Damien had decided what she should wear. A few photographs, her parents on their wedding day, her mother holding infant Elena, her father teaching her to ride a bicycle in Grant Park. All of them dead now. Her mother from cancer when Elena was 17. Her father from a heart attack 2 years after Elena married Damien. The stress of watching his only daughter marry a monster slowly eating him alive until his body quit in protest. She had no one. Damien had made sure of that. He'd peeled away her friendships one by one, declaring them unsuitable or boring or too curious about his business. He'd isolated her in this golden cage until she'd forgotten there was a world outside of it. And now he was throwing her back into that world without warning, without preparation, without anything. Elena sank onto the edge of the bed and let the tears come. They came hard and ugly, racking her body with sobs that felt like they might break her ribs. She pressed her hands over her mouth to muffle the sounds, not wanting to give anyone downstairs the satisfaction of hearing her fall apart. 5 years. 5 years of trying to be what he needed. 5 years of doctor's appointments and specialists and invasive procedures and pharmaceutical cocktails that made her sick and desperate, and still nothing, nothing, nothing. Her hands stilled. Her fingers, pressed against her mouth, brushed against the inside pocket of her gown. The pocket where she'd hidden the folded papers 3 years ago and never removed them. The pocket she'd forgotten about until this moment. Slowly, Elena reached inside and pulled out the document. It was worn now, the creases soft from being folded and unfolded countless times in the beginning, when she'd first received it and read it over and over, trying to understand what it meant. Medical records from Rush University Medical Center. Patient, Damien Blackwell. She unfolded the papers with trembling fingers, though she knew every word by heart. The consultation had been 7 years ago, 2 years before she'd met Damien at that gallery opening where he'd appeared like a dark prince, powerful and attentive, and so interested in her thoughts about the Rothko painting she'd been studying. She'd thought it was fate. It had been calculation. The medical report was clinical, detached, precise. Patient sustained multiple gunshot wounds to lower abdomen and pelvic region during altercation in 2013. Emergency surgery successful in preserving life. However, significant trauma to reproductive organs has resulted in permanent sterility. Sperm count, 0. Prognosis for natural conception, impossible. Patient counseled on alternative options including adoption and surrogacy. Elena had found the document by accident 3 years ago, misfiled in a box of old financial records she'd been helping organize. She'd meant to throw it away, return it, forget about it. Instead, she'd hidden it, because some part of her had known. Some instinct had whispered that this information was dangerous and precious, and needed to be kept safe. She read the words again now, and they felt different. Permanent sterility, sperm count, 0. Prognosis for natural conception, impossible. Downstairs, Damien was celebrating the birth of his son, his heir, his legacy, his biological child. Except Damien Blackwell couldn't have biological children. The doctors had been certain, definitive, absolute, which meant the baby in Sierra Vale's arms, the baby Damien had just declared his heir in front of Chicago's most dangerous men, wasn't his. Elena stood slowly, the papers clutched in her hands. Her mind was racing now, grief and shock burning away in the face of something else. Rage. Pure, incandescent rage. Damien had humiliated her in front of everyone, had called her barren, defective, worthless, had paraded his mistress and his supposed son like trophies won from Elena's failure, and all of it was a lie. Elena walked to the window and looked out at the sprawling grounds of the estate, at the city lights glittering beyond the high walls that had been her prison. She had nothing. No money. Damien controlled everything. No friends. He'd made sure of that. No family. They were all gone. No home. She was being thrown out in the morning like trash. But she had this proof that everything Damien had built tonight was a lie. This evidence that the heir he'd announced so proudly couldn't be his. This weapon. Elena carefully refolded the papers and slipped them back into the hidden pocket of her gown. Then she opened her suitcase and began to methodically go through her belongings, looking for anything else of value. Anything that could be sold, traded, used. She found $300 in cash hidden in an old jewelry box. Emergency money she'd squirreled away years ago in some moment of paranoid preparation. $300. It was nothing. It was everything. She found her old phone, the one she'd used before Damien gave her the new one with tracking and monitoring and his complete control. The battery was dead, but the phone itself might still work. She found a coat, wool, warm, practical. One of the few things she'd kept from her old life. She packed these items into the smallest suitcase, along with the photographs and a few changes of clothes. Everything else she left behind. The designer gowns and shoes and handbags, all of it was Damien's anyway. All of it carried his mark, his ownership, his control. Elena changed out of the emerald gown and into jeans and a sweater. She pulled her dark hair back into a ponytail. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Pale, thin, exhausted, but alive. Still alive. She picked up the small suitcase and walked to the door, pressed her ear against it, listening. The party was still going downstairs, music and laughter and the clink of glasses. They'd be at it for hours yet, celebrating Damien's victory and her defeat. Elena opened the door and slipped into the hallway. She knew this house, knew every corner and corridor and servant's entrance. 5 years of wandering alone through empty rooms had taught her all its secrets. She made her way to the back stairs, the ones the staff used, descended 3 flights to the service level, found the exit that led to the garage. The garage where Damien kept his collection of cars, each one worth more than most people's homes. And where she knew Marcus kept the staff vehicle, a nondescript sedan used for errands and pickups. The keys were on a hook by the door, exactly where they always were. Elena took them. She put her suitcase in the trunk, started the engine. The dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m. The gate at the end of the drive was closed, but Elena had the code. Damien had never bothered to change it, never imagined she might leave. She entered the numbers with steady fingers. The gate swung open, and Elena Cross drove away from her husband's mansion, away from 5 years of humiliation and loneliness and pain, away from the life that had nearly destroyed her. She had $300, a dead phone, a suitcase of old clothes, and a medical document that could blow apart Damien Blackwell's carefully constructed lie. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The December cold hit her like a fist the moment she parked the car and stepped out onto Michigan Avenue. Elena had driven aimlessly for an hour, her hands shaking on the wheel, her mind unable to process where to go or what to do. She'd finally parked in a public garage because she couldn't drive anymore, couldn't think anymore, couldn't do anything but sit and try to breathe. Now she stood on the sidewalk at 1 a.m, watching her breath fog in the freezing air, and realized she'd made a terrible mistake. She should have stayed at the mansion, should have waited until morning, taken the car Damien had arranged, accepted whatever severance he'd planned to offer. At least then, she would have had something. Now she had nothing. The car was stolen. Marcus would report it missing by dawn if he hadn't already. The credit cards in her wallet were all linked to Damien's accounts. He'd freeze them the moment he realized she'd left. The $300 would barely cover a week in the cheapest motel. Elena started walking, pulling her coat tighter against the wind that howled between the buildings. Chicago in December was brutal. The kind of cold that found every gap in your clothing and worked its way into your bones. The kind of cold that killed people who didn't have anywhere warm to sleep. She walked until she found a 24-hour diner, bright and warm and smelling of coffee and grease. She ordered a cup of coffee just to justify taking up space in a booth, just to sit somewhere that wasn't the freezing sidewalk. The waitress who brought the coffee was maybe 60, with kind eyes and tired feet. "You okay, honey?" she asked, setting down the cup. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. "You need anything else? Food? We've got good pie." "Just coffee," Elena managed. "Thank you." The waitress lingered a moment longer, then nodded and walked away. Elena wrapped her hands around the warm cup and tried to think. She needed a plan. Needed to figure out what to do next, where to go, how to survive. The medical document was still in her pocket, a secret weight that felt heavier with every passing minute. She could go to the police. The thought appeared fully formed, and for a moment it felt like salvation. She could go to the police and show them the document. Could tell them Damien had committed fraud, had claimed a child that wasn't his, had what exactly? Claimed a child? That wasn't illegal. Damien could claim any child he wanted, could announce anyone as his heir. Unless there was a question of inheritance or legal paternity, the police wouldn't care. And even if they did care, even if they investigated, Elena knew exactly what would happen. Damien would deny everything, would produce falsified documents showing genetic testing proving Dante was his son, would have his lawyers bury the real medical records under legal motions and technicalities and threats. And Elena would be declared a bitter ex-wife trying to ruin her former husband with lies. She'd be destroyed. Or more likely, she'd simply disappear. Damien didn't tolerate threats, he eliminated them. Elena had seen it happen, though she'd always pretended not to notice. The business associates who challenged him and then stopped appearing at meetings. The rival organization leader who'd tried to move into Damien's territory and ended up in the Chicago River. The accountant who'd asked too many questions about certain transactions and took an unexpected early retirement to somewhere no one could verify. If Elena went to the police, she would die. It would look like an accident, a suicide, a random mugging gone wrong. But she would die. The coffee had gone cold in her hands. Elena set it down and pulled out the medical document, unfolding it on the table. She stared at the words, at the proof of Damien's lie, and tried to think. There had to be a way to use this, had to be a way to hurt him the way he'd hurt her. But she couldn't do it alone. She needed help. Needed someone who understood how Damien operated, how to navigate his world, how to strike without being destroyed in the retaliation. She needed someone who knew the law. Elena's breath caught. Graham Pierce, Damien's attorney, or former attorney, rather. Graham had handled Damien's legitimate business for years, kept everything clean and legal on paper while turning a blind eye to what happened in the shadows. But 6 months ago, there had been some kind of falling out. Elena didn't know the details. Damien never discussed business with her, but she'd heard the arguments through closed doors, heard Damien's rage and Graham's quiet, stubborn refusal to back down. Graham had quit, or been fired. Either way, he'd left Damien's employ and started his own practice. And in the brief time Elena had interacted with him during the marriage, Graham had been kind. Not warm, not friendly, but kind in small ways. Holding doors, asking if she needed anything, actually looking at her when they spoke, treating her like a person rather than an ornament. It wasn't much, but it was more than anyone else in Damien's world had ever given her. Elena pulled out her dead phone, then realized the futility of it. She had no way to charge it, no way to look up Graham's new office. The waitress passed by again, and Elena caught her arm gently. "Excuse me, do you have a phone book?" The waitress smiled. "We've got one in the back. Let me grab it." She returned a moment later with a battered Yellow Pages, the spine cracked and pages dog-eared from use. Elena flipped to the attorneys section and ran her finger down the listings. Pierce, Graham, attorney at law, office on LaSalle Street. Elena memorized the address, then carefully tore out the page and tucked it into her pocket with the medical document. She left a $20 bill on the table for a $3 coffee and walked back out into the cold. By the time the sun rose, Elena was sitting on a bench in Millennium Park, shivering despite her coat, watching early morning joggers and dog walkers move through the frozen landscape. She hadn't slept, hadn't dared to. Sleep required safety, and she had none. The city woke around her slowly, lights coming on in offices, cars filling the streets, the rhythm of a weekday building momentum. At 8:30, Elena stood and made her way to LaSalle Street. Graham Pierce's office was in a modest building sandwiched between a coffee shop and an insurance agency. Nothing like the gleaming high-rise where he'd worked when he represented Damien. Elena climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and found a door with frosted glass and simple lettering, Pierce and Associates, Attorneys at Law. She knocked. No answer. She tried the handle and found it unlocked. Stepped inside. The reception area was small and neat, with a desk that was currently empty and a few chairs arranged along one wall. Beyond it, a door stood ajar, and Elena could hear movement inside. "We're not open yet," a voice called, Graham's voice. "Come back at 9." Elena stepped forward. Mr. Pierce, it's Elena Cross. I need to speak with you. There was a long silence. Then Graham appeared in the doorway, and his expression shifted from irritation to shock. He was in his late 40s, with graying hair and the kind of face that wore stress like a permanent accessory. His suit was expensive but rumpled, like he'd slept in it. His eyes were sharp and intelligent, currently fixed on Elena with something between concern and alarm. Mrs. Blackwell, he said carefully. What are you doing here? It's just Elena now, she said. Or it will be soon. Damien threw me out last night. Graham's jaw tightened. I see. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Elena asked. Or are you relieved you don't have to pretend to respect me anymore? The words came out harsher than she'd intended, but she was so tired, so angry, so far past the point of polite pretense. Graham studied her for a long moment, then stepped back and gestured into his office. Come in, he said quietly. Sit down before you fall down. Elena walked into the office and sank into a chair facing his desk. Graham closed the door behind them and moved to a small coffee maker in the corner. You look like you could use this, he said, pouring a cup and handing it to her. Elena took it gratefully, wrapping her cold hands around the warmth. Graham sat behind his desk and folded his hands, waiting. I need your help, Elena said. With what? With destroying Damien Blackwell. Graham's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A flicker of interest, quickly suppressed. That's a dangerous ambition, he said carefully. Men who try to destroy Damien tend to end up destroyed themselves. I'm already destroyed, Elena said. He made sure of that. I have nothing left to lose. You have your life, Graham pointed out. That's not nothing. Is it? Elena set down the coffee and pulled the folded medical document from her pocket. Is this a life? Running with no money, no home, no one to turn to? Waiting for Damien to decide I'm a liability and needs to be eliminated? She slid the papers across the desk. Graham looked at them but didn't touch them. What is this? Proof, Elena said. Proof that everything Damien announced last night was a lie. Graham picked up the document slowly, unfolded it, and began to read. Elena watched his face change as comprehension dawned, watched his eyes widen fractionally, his mouth thin into a hard line. Where did you get this? He asked quietly. I found it 3 years ago, misfiled in some old records. I kept it because... Elena trailed off, unsure how to explain. Because something told me to. Graham read through the document again, more carefully this time. Then he set it down and looked at Elena with new intensity. Do you understand what this means? He asked. It means Damien can't have biological children, Elena said. Which means the baby he claims is his son can't be his. It means more than that, Graham said. It means Damien committed fraud in front of witnesses. It means he's built his succession plan on a lie. It means the child he's named his heir has no legal claim to anything. Can we prove it? Elena asked. Can we use this? Graham leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of his face. We can try, but Elena, you need to understand what you're asking for. Damien isn't just going to accept this revelation and walk away. He'll fight. He'll come after you with everything he has. I know. No, Graham said gently. I don't think you do. I've seen what Damien does to threats. I've seen people disappear. I've buried evidence and signed NDAs and looked the other way while bodies were cleaned up. I did that for years because I told myself it was just business, just part of working in his world. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the street below. 6 months ago, Damien asked me to do something I couldn't justify anymore, something that would have destroyed an innocent family just to further his interests. I refused. He threatened me, threatened my career, my reputation, my life. Graham turned back to face her. I walked away because I finally reached my limit, but I walked away alive because Damien decided I wasn't worth the trouble of killing. If you come after him with this, you won't get that luxury. He'll see you as a mortal threat, and he will eliminate you. Elena stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady. He already eliminated me. He just did it publicly instead of permanently. But I'm still here, and I have this. She tapped the medical document. And I'm going to use it to destroy him, with or without your help. Graham studied her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression, the caution giving way to something that looked almost like respect. You're serious about this, he said. Completely. Even knowing it might kill you? Especially knowing that, Elena said. Because if I do nothing, if I just disappear into whatever small life I can scrape together with $300 and no skills that matter, I'll die anyway. Maybe not physically, but everything that makes me who I am will die. I'll spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when Damien will decide I'm a loose end that needs cutting. She picked up the medical document and held it out to Graham. This is the only power I have, the only weapon, and I'm going to use it. The only question is whether you'll help me aim it properly or whether I'll have to figure it out on my own and probably get myself killed in the process. Graham took the document, held it for a moment, then carefully folded it and handed it back to her. Keep that safe, he said. We're going to need it. Elena felt something loosen in her chest. You'll help me? I'll help you, Graham confirmed. Not because I think we'll win, not even because I think we'll survive, but because I'm tired of watching Damien Blackwell destroy people and face no consequences. He moved to his desk and pulled out a legal pad and pen. Sit down, Chess, he said. Tell me everything you know about Sierra Vale, about the baby, about last night. Every detail, no matter how small. If we're going to do this, we need to be thorough. Elena sat, and for the first time since Damien had shattered her world, she felt something that might have been hope. It was dangerous, that hope. But it was also fuel. And she was going to need all the fuel she could find to burn Damien Blackwell's empire to the ground. Elena spent the next 3 hours in Graham's office, going through every detail she could remember about the previous night. Graham took notes in precise handwriting, occasionally stopping her to ask clarifying questions or probe deeper into something she'd mentioned. Sierra Vale, he said, tapping his pen against the legal pad. How long has she been living at the mansion? I'm not sure exactly, Elena admitted. Maybe 8 months? I started seeing her around the house last spring. Damien said she was hired to help with some administrative work, but she was never in the office areas. She stayed in the West Wing. The West Wing, Graham repeated. That's where Damien keeps his personal quarters, isn't it? Separate from the master suite you shared? Elena nodded, feeling the familiar sting of humiliation. Even Graham knew about the separate bedrooms, the distance Damien had maintained throughout their marriage. Did you ever speak to her? Graham asked. Once or twice. Nothing substantial. She'd smile and say good morning, but there was always this look in her eyes, like she knew something I didn't. She probably did, Graham said dryly. She knew she was carrying a baby Damien planned to claim as his own. But whose baby is it really? Elena asked. If it's not Damien's, someone else is the father. That's what we need to find out. Graham made another note. Did Sierra have visitors? Anyone who came to see her specifically? Elena thought back, trying to remember. I saw Marcus going to that wing sometimes, more than usual for just security checks. Graham's pen stilled. Marcus Chen? Damien's head of security? Yes, I didn't think much of it at the time. Marcus goes everywhere in that house, but now that I think about it, he was always very careful about when he went to the West Wing, always when Damien was out. Interesting. Well, Graham underlined something on his pad. Marcus has been with Damien for what, 10 years? 12, Elena said. He started right after Damien took over the organization from his uncle. Loyal? I thought so, but loyal men don't usually visit the boss's mistress when he's not around. Graham leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. We need more than speculation. We need proof of who the father actually is. DNA evidence would be ideal, but getting it won't be easy. Damien will have had tests done, Elena said. He wouldn't claim the baby without confirming paternity first. He's too careful for that. Except he can't confirm paternity, Graham pointed out. Because he's sterile, which means either the tests were falsified or he never actually had them done, Elena finished. He just assumed the baby was his because Sierra told him it was. Would she be that bold, lying to Damien Blackwell about something that fundamental? Elena thought about the young woman she'd seen holding the baby, about the calculating emptiness in those blue eyes. If she thought she could get away with it? Yes. Sierra isn't stupid. She knows exactly what she's doing. Graham made more notes, then looked up at Elena. Where have you been staying? Please don't tell me you slept on a park bench last night. Elena's silence was answer enough. Graham swore quietly. Elena, you can't. That's not safe. Damien could have people looking for you right now. I don't have anywhere else to go, Elena said. I have $300. That's not enough for even a week in a decent hotel. It's not about decent, Graham said. It's about safe. And a park bench is the opposite of safe. He pulled out his wallet and extracted several bills. Here, take this. Elena stared at the money, at least $500. I can't accept that. You can and you will, Graham said firmly. Consider it a retainer. You're my client now, and I need my client alive and functional, not frozen to death in Millennium Park. Graham, there's a motel on Western Avenue, he continued, writing down an address. Nothing fancy, but it's clean and the owner doesn't ask questions. Tell her Graham sent you. She'll give you a weekly rate and won't require ID. Elena took the money and the address with shaking hands. Why are you helping me like this? Graham's expression softened slightly. Because someone should have helped you 5 years ago, before you married that monster. And because I spent too many years looking the other way while Damien destroyed people, I'd like to try being on the right side for once. He stood and walked to a filing cabinet, pulling out a folder. I kept copies of everything when I left Damien's employ. Everything I thought might be relevant someday, including this. He handed Elena a photograph. It showed Damien at some kind of medical facility, younger by maybe 10 years. The image was grainy, clearly taken from a distance or with a hidden camera. This was taken right after the shooting that left him sterile, Graham explained. A rival organization tried to take him out. They failed, obviously, but not before doing permanent damage. Damien kept it very quiet, paid off the medical staff, buried the records, eliminated anyone who might talk. How did you get this? Elena asked. I was already working for him by then. He needed someone to handle the legal cleanup, make sure nothing leaked that could make him look weak. Graham's mouth twisted. I helped him bury it, helped him maintain the image of strength and virility, and I told myself it was just business. He pulled out another document, this one a legal contract. This is the agreement Damien made with the hospital, complete confidentiality in exchange for a very generous donation. The original medical records were supposed to be destroyed, but clearly someone kept a copy. The one I found, Elena said. Exactly. Which means someone at that hospital decided to keep insurance. Smart. Graham returned the documents to the folder. We can use this to establish a pattern. Damien has been hiding his condition for years. The question is why he'd suddenly claim a biological heir when he knows it's impossible. Pride, Elena said quietly. Damien's entire identity is built on strength and legacy. Admitting he can't have children would be admitting weakness. So he claims someone else's child as his own, Graham said. It's bold, reckless, even. But it might work if no one questions it. Except I'm questioning it. Except you're questioning it, Graham agreed, which makes you dangerous. He looked at her seriously. Elena, I need you to understand something. Once we start this, once we begin gathering evidence and building a case, there's no going back. Damien will find out eventually, and when he does, he'll retaliate. I know. I'm not sure you do. I've seen what Damien does to people who cross him. It's not quick, and it's not clean. He likes people to suffer first, to understand the magnitude of their mistake before he ends them. Elena met his eyes steadily. He made me suffer for 5 years. He took everything from me. My autonomy, my dignity, my sense of self. Last night he took the last thing I had. My public identity as his wife. I have nothing left for him to take except my life, and honestly, Graham, right now that doesn't feel like much of a threat. Graham studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, then let's talk about what happens next. He pulled his legal pad closer. First, we need to verify the medical records you found. I'll reach out to my contacts at Rush University Medical Center, see if we can get confirmation that these records are authentic and haven't been altered. Will they cooperate? Elena asked. For the right price, people usually cooperate, and I know a few administrators who owe me favors. He made a note. Second, we need to find out who the baby's actual father is. That means investigating Sierra's connections, her relationships, anyone she might have been involved with around the time of conception. Marcus, Elena said. I saw the way he looked at her a few times. It wasn't just professional. We'll start there, Graham agreed. But we need proof. Photos, messages, something concrete. How do we get that? Carefully, Graham said. Very, very carefully. Damien's security is sophisticated. We can't just break into the mansion and start going through phones. What about the baby's DNA? Elena asked. You said that would be ideal proof. It would be, but getting a sample without Damien knowing is nearly impossible. The baby is under constant supervision, and any medical procedures would be documented. Elena thought for a moment. What about the hospital where he was born? They would have taken samples for standard newborn screening. Graham's eyes widened slightly. That's not bad. We can find out which hospital Sierra delivered at. We might be able to get access to those records. It would require legal maneuvering and probably a court order, but it's possible. How long would that take? Weeks at minimum, maybe months. Graham saw her expression and added, I know that feels like forever, but building a solid case takes time. We can't rush this and risk making mistakes that Damien's lawyers could exploit. Elena slumped in her chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Months of hiding, months of looking over my shoulder, months of not knowing if every person I pass on the street is one of Damien's people. Yes, Graham said gently, that's exactly what it means, and I'm sorry, but there's no other way to do this safely. Nothing about this is safe. True, but we can try to minimize the risk. He handed her a business card with a phone number written on the back. This is a burner phone I keep for sensitive cases. Call me on this number, never on the office line. Don't use your own phone. Damien probably has it tracked. Buy a prepaid cell from any convenience store, pay cash, and use a fake name. Elena took the card, feeling the weight of all these precautions. This was her life now. Fake names and burner phones and looking over her shoulder. What should I do in the meantime? She asked. Just hide at that motel and wait? For now, yes. Keep your head down. Don't contact anyone from your old life. Don't go anywhere Damien might expect you to go. Graham hesitated, then added, And Elena? Don't trust anyone. Damien has people everywhere. Police, judges, business owners. Anyone could be feeding him information. Even you? The question came out before Elena could stop it. Graham didn't look offended. Even me. You'd be smart to maintain some skepticism about my motivations. He smiled faintly. But for what it's worth, I really do want to see Damien brought down. He's caused too much damage for too long. Elena stood, tucking the money and address into her pocket along with the precious medical document. How will I know if you find something? I'll call you on the burner phone. Give me a few days to start making inquiries. In the meantime, rest, eat, try to regain some strength. Graham walked her to the door. And Elena, be careful. You're more resilient than you think, but you're also very vulnerable right now. Don't take unnecessary risks. Elena nodded and stepped out into the hallway. The building suddenly felt too exposed, too public. Every face she passed could be someone working for Damien. She hurried down the stairs and out onto LaSalle Street, pulling her coat tight against the bitter wind. The motel Graham had directed her to was a 40-minute walk, but Elena didn't dare take a cab, too easy to trace. She walked with her head down, trying to blend into the lunchtime crowds, just another anonymous person in a city full of them. The motel was exactly as Graham had described. Nothing fancy, but clean. The owner was a heavy-set woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Graham sent you? She asked when Elena approached the desk. Yes, ma'am. The woman looked Elena over, taking in the expensive coat and the haunted eyes. You in trouble? Yes, ma'am. The kind of trouble that's going to show up at my door with guns. Elena hesitated. I hope not. That's not exactly reassuring. But the woman pulled out a registration form. Cash only. 1 week up front. No visitors, no noise. You cause problems, you're out immediately. I understand. Name? Elena panicked for a moment, then said, Sarah Miller. The woman's eyebrow rose slightly. Clearly she didn't believe it, but she wrote it down without comment. That'll be $200 for the week. Elena handed over the money, watching her safety net shrink. The woman gave her a key attached to a plastic tag marked with a room number. Second floor, end of the hall. Ice machines on the first floor, vending machines by the office. You need anything, you come ask me directly. Don't go bothering other guests. Thank you, Elena said. Don't thank me yet, week's not over. But there was something almost kind in the woman's expression. There's a diner 2 blocks west. Good food, cheap prices. Tell them Betty sent you." Elena nodded and climbed the stairs to the second floor. The room was small and sparse. A bed, a dresser, a tiny bathroom, a television that looked 20 years old. But it was warm and private, and nobody here knew who she was or who she'd been married to. Elena locked the door, engaged the chain, and finally let herself collapse onto the bed. She'd been running on adrenaline for almost 12 hours. Now, in this quiet room with its thin walls and worn carpet, the reality of her situation crashed over her. She was alone. Truly, completely alone in a way she'd never been before. When her parents died, she'd had friends and colleagues from the gallery. When she married Damien, she'd had the staff and the social circle of wives and girlfriends, even if they'd never been real friends. Now she had nobody. Nobody except Graham Pierce, a man she barely knew and probably shouldn't trust. Elena pulled out the medical document and unfolded it once more, staring at the words that had become both her weapon and her curse. Permanent sterility. She thought about Damien standing in front of all those people, holding that baby, his face transformed with genuine love and pride. Had he known? Had he suspected the child wasn't his? Or had Sierra's lie been so convincing that he'd never questioned it? And what would he do when he found out the truth? Elena refolded the document and tucked it back into her pocket. Then she pulled out the cash Graham had given her and counted it carefully. $500 from Graham, plus the $100 she had left from her own stash. $600 total, minus the $200 for the motel. $400 to last until Graham found something useful or she figured out her next move. Elena's stomach growled, reminding her she hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. She thought about the diner Betty had mentioned, but the idea of going back outside, of being exposed and visible, made her feel sick. Instead, she lay down on the bed and closed her eyes. Just for a moment, she told herself, just to rest. She was asleep before she could finish the thought. Elena woke to darkness and the sound of shouting in the hallway. She sat up disoriented, her heart pounding, unsure for a moment where she was. The motel. She was at the motel. The shouting continued, a man and woman arguing about money, their voices carrying clearly through the thin walls. Elena checked the bedside clock, 9:47 p.m. She'd slept for almost 8 hours. Her body ached and her mouth tasted like ash, but the desperate exhaustion had eased slightly. She got up and went to the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face and trying to assess herself in the spotted mirror. She looked terrible. Pale, hollow-eyed, her hair a tangled mess. She looked like someone running for her life, because that's what she was. Elena returned to the main room and turned on the television, keeping the volume low. The news was on. Some story about a warehouse fire on the south side. She watched numbly, not really processing the information, until the anchor moved to the next story. In other news, prominent Chicago businessman Damien Blackwell announced the birth of his son and heir at a private ceremony last night. The child, named Dante Blackwell, was introduced to family and associates in what sources describe as an emotional celebration. Blackwell, who heads the Blackwell Group real estate development firm, has been a fixture in Chicago's business community for over 2 decades. His wife Elena Blackwell was not present at the announcement, and sources close to the family suggest the couple may be separating. Representatives for Mr. Blackwell declined to comment on his personal life. The screen showed a photo of Damien, a professional headshot where he looked distinguished and powerful. Then it showed a photo of Elena from some charity event, smiling in a designer gown, looking like the perfect society wife. That woman felt like a stranger now. Elena turned off the television and sat in the darkness of the motel room, listening to the sounds of other people's lives filtering through the walls. Her stomach growled again, more insistently this time. She needed food, needed to maintain her strength if she was going to survive this. Elena pulled on her coat and ventured out into the December night. The diner Betty had mentioned was easy to find, a bright spot in an otherwise dark block, its windows fogged with warmth. Inside, it was half full with an eclectic mix of night shift workers, insomniacs, and people who had nowhere better to be. Elena slid into a booth near the back and picked up a laminated menu. Everything was cheap. Burgers for $7, breakfast all day for $6, coffee refills were free. A waitress appeared, young, maybe early 20s, with tired eyes and a professional smile. What can I get you, hun? Scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee, please, Elena said. Betty sent me. The waitress's expression shifted slightly, becoming friendlier. Any friend of Betty's gets the good coffee, not the stuff we serve everyone else. You want hash browns with that? Yes, please. Coming right up. The food arrived quickly, and Elena ate mechanically, forcing herself to finish everything even though her stomach felt like it had shrunk. She needed the calories, needed the energy. She was on her second cup of the allegedly good coffee when someone slid into the booth across from her. Elena's head snapped up, her body tensing for flight. But it wasn't one of Damien's men. It was a woman, maybe 40, with short black hair and sharp features. She wore a leather jacket and had the kind of bearing that suggested she could handle herself in a fight. Elena Cross? The woman asked quietly. Elena's blood turned to ice. I don't know who that is. Yes, you do, and I'm not here to hurt you, so relax. The woman leaned back in the booth, her posture deliberately casual. My name is Rebecca Torres. I'm a private investigator, and I've been looking for you. I don't need an investigator, Elena said, already sliding toward the edge of the booth, preparing to run. Maybe not, but Graham Pierce does. He hired me this afternoon. Rebecca pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. Call him on the number he gave you. Ask him if he knows Rebecca Torres. I'll wait. Elena stared at the card, then at the woman, trying to assess the threat level. Rebecca sighed. Look, I understand you're scared. You should be. Damien Blackwell is a dangerous man, and you've made yourself his enemy. But I'm not working for Damien. I'm working for Graham, which means I'm working for you. Why should I believe that? Because if I was working for Damien, you'd already be in the trunk of a car heading back to that mansion. Rebecca's voice was matter-of-fact, without malice. I found you in under 6 hours. You're not exactly a master of going to ground. If I can find you, Damien's people can find you. Which is why Graham sent me, to help you not get killed. Elena's hands shook as she pulled out the business card Graham had given her and the prepaid phone she'd bought that afternoon. She dialed the number with fumbling fingers. Graham answered on the second ring. Yes? It's Elena. There's a woman here who says you hired her, Rebecca Torres. I did, Graham confirmed. She's good at what she does, and more importantly, she's trustworthy. Let her help you. Graham, Elena, you can't do this alone. You need someone who knows how to operate in dangerous situations. Rebecca has experience with cases like yours. Please, trust me on this. Elena looked at Rebecca, who was calmly sipping a cup of coffee she'd apparently ordered while Elena was panicking. Okay, Elena said finally. Okay. She ended the call and set the phone down on the table. Rebecca smiled slightly. Feel better? Not really. Fair enough. Trust takes time. Rebecca pulled out a small notebook. Graham filled me in on the basics. You have medical evidence that Damien can't have biological children, and he just claimed a baby as his heir. We need to prove the baby isn't his and that Damien committed fraud. That's the plan, Elena said cautiously. It's a good plan. Ambitious, likely to get you killed, but good. Rebecca made a note. Graham's handling the legal and medical record side of things. My job is to find out who the baby's real father is and get proof. We think it might be Marcus Chen, Elena said. Damien's head of security. Rebecca's eyebrows rose. That would be bold, sleeping with the boss's mistress while working as his most trusted guard. I saw them together, the way he looked at her. Looking isn't proof, but it's a starting point. Rebecca made another note. I'll start surveillance tomorrow. See who Sierra's in contact with, where she goes, who visits her. She lives at Damien's mansion. You can't exactly stake out the property. You'd be surprised what I can do, Rebecca said. But you're right that it'll be challenging, which is why I need you to tell me everything you know about the mansion's security, the staff, the routines, everything. They spent the next hour going through details, with Elena describing the layout of the property, the guard rotations she'd observed, the patterns of household staff. Rebecca took notes rapidly, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Finally, she closed the notebook and looked at Elena seriously. You need to move from that motel. It's too exposed, and Betty's place is one of the first spots anyone looking for you would check. Graham just sent me there this morning, Elena protested, and by tomorrow morning you need to be somewhere else. I know a place. A short-term rental, the owner doesn't ask questions, and it's more secure than Betty's motel. I can't afford... Graham's covering it, Rebecca interrupted. Consider it part of the investigative expenses. You can pay him back after we destroy Damien, and you get a proper divorce settlement. If we destroy Damien, Elena thought, if we survive that long. But she nodded. Okay. When do we move? Tonight. Right now. Pack your things, and I'll drive you over. Why the rush? Rebecca's expression turned serious. Because I wasn't the only one looking for you today. I spotted 2 of Damien's regular contractors nosing around this neighborhood this evening. They haven't found you yet, but it's only a matter of time. Elena felt her remaining sense of security crumble. He's hunting me. Of course he is. You embarrassed him by running away. He can't let that stand. Rebecca stood. Come on, let's get you somewhere safer before they widen their search grid. Elena left money on the table for her meal and followed Rebecca out into the cold night. A car was parked at the curb, a nondescript sedan that could have belonged to anyone. Get in, Rebecca said. I'll follow you to the motel. Wait while you pack, then take you to the new place. Elena climbed into the passenger seat, her mind racing. This was real now. Damien was actively looking for her. His people were sweeping the city, searching, and eventually they would find her. Unless she found what she needed first. Unless she could strike before Damien's net closed completely. Rebecca started the engine and pulled away from the curb. You okay? No, Elena said honestly. I'm terrified. Good, Rebecca said. Fear keeps you sharp. It's when you stop being afraid that you make stupid mistakes. They drove through the December darkness, and Elena watched the city lights blur past, wondering how many days or weeks she had before this all came crashing down, before Damien found her, before the truth about his impossible heir came to light, before someone ended up dead. She touched the medical document in her pocket, feeling its worn edges, and made herself a promise. If this was going to end badly, if she was going to die trying to destroy Damien Blackwell, then she was going to make sure she took him down with her, no matter what it cost, no matter who she had to become. The old Elena Cross, the one who smiled at charity events and pretended not to notice her husband's cruelty, was gone. The woman sitting in Rebecca Torres's car was someone new, someone harder, someone dangerous, someone with absolutely nothing left to lose. The new safe house was a basement apartment in Pilsen, accessed through a side entrance that was invisible from the street. Rebecca had walked Elena through the security protocols twice before leaving her there with a new burner phone and instructions to stay inside unless absolutely necessary. That had been 3 days ago. 3 days of pacing the cramped space, jumping at every sound, checking the locks compulsively. 3 days of waiting for Graham or Rebecca to call with news, with progress, with something that felt like forward momentum. The call finally came on the 4th morning. We have confirmation, Graham said without preamble. The medical records are authentic. I had 2 independent sources verify them against Russia's archived files. Damien Blackwell is permanently sterile, no question about it. Elena felt something loosen in her chest. So we can prove he's lying about the baby. We can prove he can't be the biological father, yes, but that's only half of what we need. Graham's voice carried a note of caution. We still need to identify who the actual father is and get DNA evidence to support it. Has Rebecca found anything? She's been conducting surveillance on the mansion. Sierra hasn't left the property since the announcement, but Rebecca's managed to identify several people who visited, including Marcus Chen, who's been to the West Wing 5 times in the past 3 days. That's suspicious, Elena said. It's suggestive, but not proof. Marcus could claim he's just doing security checks. Graham paused. Rebecca thinks she can get photographic evidence if she can position herself correctly. The West Wing has windows that face the garden, and there's a maintenance building with a clear sight line. That sounds dangerous. It is, which is why Rebecca's waiting for the right opportunity, a time when most of the security team is occupied elsewhere. Another pause. There's something else. I've been looking into Sierra's background, trying to find connections to Marcus or anyone else who might be the father. And? Sierra Vale isn't her real name. She was born Sierra Valdez, grew up in Austin, Texas. Dropped out of college at 19, worked various service jobs, then disappeared from the public record for about 2 years before resurfacing in Chicago 8 months ago. Elena processed this information. Where was she during those 2 years? That's what I'm trying to find out. But here's what's interesting. Marcus Chen also has a connection to Austin. He worked private security there before Damien hired him. The implications clicked into place. They knew each other before Sierra came to the mansion. Possibly. I'm still trying to confirm it, but the timeline fits. Graham's voice took on a harder edge. If Marcus and Sierra planned this together, if they deliberately set up Damien to claim a child that isn't his, then this is conspiracy and fraud on a level that could bring down his entire organization. Why would they do it? Elena asked. What do they gain? Think about it, Graham said. Damien just declared that baby his heir. That child is now positioned to inherit everything. The business, the assets, the power. And who do you think would control that inheritance until the child comes of age? Sierra, Elena breathed. As the mother. Exactly. And who would be protecting her and the child as head of security? Marcus. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. They're positioning themselves to take over Damien's empire. It's brilliant in a twisted way, Graham said. Damien can't have children, so he's desperate for an heir. Sierra provides one, Damien claims it as his own, and suddenly she and Marcus have a path to everything Damien has built. All they have to do is wait. Wait for what? Graham's silence was answer enough. You think they're planning to kill him, Elena said quietly. I think it's a possibility we need to consider. Once the baby is established as Damien's heir, once all the legal paperwork is in place, Damien becomes expendable. An accident, a heart attack, a random act of violence in his own dangerous world, any of those could happen, and Sierra and Marcus would be positioned perfectly to take control. Elena sat down on the apartment's worn couch, her mind reeling. We need to warn him. Warn Damien? Graham sounded incredulous. The man who threw you out in front of everyone? Who humiliated you and stole your mother's locket and is probably actively hunting you right now? I know what he did, Elena said sharply. But if Sierra and Marcus are planning to murder him, we can't just let it happen. That's not justice. That's natural selection, Graham interrupted. Damien Blackwell has killed people, Elena. Ordered executions, buried bodies, destroyed lives. If someone in his own organization decides to eliminate him, that's just the world he created finally consuming him. I didn't come to you to let Damien get murdered, Elena said. I came to you to expose him, to prove he lied about the baby, to take away his legacy, not his life. Why? Graham's question was blunt. Why do you care if he lives or dies? Elena struggled to articulate something she barely understood herself. Because if he dies, especially if he dies before the truth comes out, then he becomes a martyr. His legacy stays intact. The baby he claimed as his heir inherits everything, and Sierra and Marcus win. But if we expose him while he's still alive, if we prove that his perfect heir is a lie and that he was betrayed by his own people, then we destroy him completely. We take away everything he values most, his power, his reputation, his legacy. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Graham said, You're more ruthless than I gave you credit for. I learned from the best, Elena said bitterly. 5 years with Damien Blackwell taught me exactly how to hurt someone where it matters most. All right, Graham said. Then we proceed as planned. We gather evidence, we build our case, and we expose everything publicly before anyone ends up dead. But Elena, that means we're racing against a clock now. If Marcus and Sierra really are planning to eliminate Damien, they could move at any time. How long do we have? I don't know. But I'd guess they'll wait until after the legal paperwork is finalized. The documents establishing Dante as Damien's heir and beneficiary. That process usually takes a few weeks. So we have weeks to find proof and expose them. Maybe less. Maybe more. Depends on how patient they are. Graham paused. Rebecca's planning to attempt the surveillance tonight. There's a charity event at the Palmer house that Damien's attending. Most of his security team will be with him, leaving the mansion less protected. That's our opportunity, Elena said. It's Rebecca's opportunity. You're staying exactly where you are, locked in that apartment, where it's safe. Graham, no arguments. You hired me to handle this legally and safely. That means you don't go anywhere near that mansion. His voice softened slightly. I know you want to be involved, but the best thing you can do right now is stay alive and stay hidden. Let Rebecca do her job. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could help, but she knew he was right. She had no training in surveillance or covert operations. She'd just get in the way, or worse, get caught. Fine, she said. But you call me the moment Rebecca finds anything. I will. In the meantime, there's something you can do. Graham's tone shifted, becoming more businesslike. I need you to write down everything you remember about the night Damien announced the baby. Every detail, every word he said, every person who was there. I'm building a timeline and a witness list, and your testimony will be crucial. You think this will go to court? Elena asked. I think we need to be prepared for every possibility. If we expose Damien publicly, there will be legal ramifications, fraud charges, paternity disputes, custody battles over the child. The more documentation we have, the stronger our position. Elena found a pen and paper in the apartment's small kitchen and began writing, reconstructing that terrible night in painful detail. The emerald gown, the champagne, Damien's cruel smile as he called her Barren, Sierra in white, holding the baby. The applause, the pitying looks, the complete destruction of everything Elena had thought her life was. She was still writing 2 hours later when the burner phone rang again. It was Rebecca this time, her voice tight with urgency. We have a problem. Elena's heart jumped. What happened? I got the photos. Clear shots of Marcus and Sierra together in the West Wing, and they weren't being professional about it. Rebecca paused. But I also saw something else. There's another player involved, someone I didn't expect. Who? Cole Mercer, one of Damien's bodyguards, younger guy, been with the organization about 3 years. He showed up at the West Wing tonight, and based on what I witnessed, he's very familiar with Sierra. How familiar? Let's just say Marcus isn't the only man she's been intimate with. Rebecca's voice was grim. I got photos of Cole with the baby, Elena. He was holding Dante, looking at him the way a father looks at his son, and Sierra was watching them with an expression that was pretty damn telling. Elena felt the ground shift beneath her. So Cole might be the father, not Marcus? Or both of them think they might be the father, Rebecca said, which makes this whole situation even more complicated. Does Damien know? Elena asked. Does he know about Cole? I don't think so. Cole was being very careful, checking over his shoulder constantly. And he left through the garden exit, not the main house. He was definitely trying to avoid being seen. Elena's mind raced through the implications. So we have Sierra sleeping with at least 2 of Damien's men, one of whom is the father of the baby Damien thinks is his heir. That's the situation, yes, and it gets better. I managed to get close enough to the window to record some of their conversation. Not all of it, but enough to be interesting. What did they say? Rebecca's voice took on a careful tone. Sierra was talking about timelines, about how long they need to wait before making the move. Cole was arguing that they should wait longer, that rushing could expose everything. Sierra said they don't have time, that Damien's getting suspicious about something. Suspicious about what? She didn't specify, but Cole mentioned your name, Elena. He said, what about the wife? She ran. What if she knows something? And Sierra laughed and said you were too broken to be a threat, that Damien had made sure of that. Rage flared hot in Elena's chest. Too broken to be a threat. That's what Sierra thought. That's what they all thought. Elena? Rebecca's voice pulled her back. You still there? I'm here. Look, I know that's hard to hear, but we can use their arrogance against them. They think you're not a threat, which means they won't see you coming. What about the photos you took? Are they enough? They're enough to prove Sierra's been intimate with both Marcus and Cole. Combined with the medical records showing Damien can't be the father, it paints a pretty damning picture. But for absolute proof, we still need DNA testing. How do we get that? I'm working on it. There might be a way to obtain a sample from the baby during one of Sierra's visits to the pediatrician. I have a contact who works at the medical office they've been using. For the right price, she might be able to help us. How much? 10,000. Elena felt her stomach drop. I don't have that kind of money. I know. But Graham does, and he's willing to front it if we can guarantee results. Rebecca paused. There's risk involved. If Damien finds out we've been accessing medical records, he'll know someone's investigating. He'll increase security, go after anyone he suspects of being involved. He's already looking for me, Elena said. How much worse can it get? A lot worse, Rebecca said flatly. Right now he thinks you're a humiliated ex-wife who ran away to lick her wounds. If he realizes you're actively working against him, gathering evidence, building a case, he'll see you as a genuine threat. And Damien eliminates threats permanently. Elena thought about the medical document hidden in her pocket, about the photos Rebecca had just taken, about all the evidence slowly accumulating against Damien and Sierra and Marcus and Cole. She thought about her mother's silver locket, still somewhere in that mansion, the last piece of her family that she'd never get back. Do it, she said. Get the DNA sample. Pay whatever it costs. Elena! I'm not backing down now, Rebecca. We've come too far. Elena's voice was steady, hard. Get the sample. Prove Cole or Marcus is the father. Give us the evidence we need to destroy all of them. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then she said, All right, I'll set it up. The baby has an appointment in 3 days. If my contact can get a sample then, we'll have results within a week. A week? Elena repeated. And then what? Then we decide how to deploy the information. Graham's preference is to go public in a way that can't be buried or ignored. Press conference, media distribution, the works. Make it impossible for Damien to suppress the truth. He'll come after us, Elena said. After all of us. Probably. Which is why we need to make sure the evidence is distributed widely enough that killing us wouldn't stop the story from spreading. Rebecca's voice carried a note of dark humor. It's mutually assured destruction, basically. We hurt him badly enough that he can't recover, and we protect ourselves by making sure we're more valuable alive than dead. You've done this before, Elena realized. Taken down powerful people. A few times. It's dangerous work, but someone has to do it. Rebecca paused. Listen, I need to go. I'm still near the mansion, and I don't want to risk staying too long. Keep your phone on, stay inside, and for the love of everything, don't do anything stupid. I won't, Elena promised. She ended the call and sat in the quiet apartment, listening to the sounds of the city filtering through the small basement windows. Somewhere above her, people were living normal lives. Going to work, coming home to families, making dinner, watching television, existing in the comfortable, mundane world Elena had been violently ejected from. She wondered if she'd ever get back to that world, if there was any version of the future where she could have a normal life again, or if this, hiding in basements, gathering evidence against dangerous men, waiting for violence to find her, was what she had become permanently. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt almost clarifying. Elena pulled out the medical document and read through it again, memorizing every word, every detail. This piece of paper had started everything, had given her the weapon she needed to fight back. But it wasn't enough anymore. They needed the DNA evidence, needed absolute, undeniable proof that Damien's heir was a lie. And they needed to find out what Sierra and Cole had meant about making the move. What were they planning? When would they act? Elena stood and began pacing the small apartment, her mind working through scenarios and possibilities. If Sierra and Cole were planning to eliminate Damien, they would need to do it carefully. Make it look accidental or like natural causes. Damien was too high profile for an obvious murder. That would bring investigation, scrutiny, problems. But Damien lived in a dangerous world. Accidents happened. Rivals made moves. Even in his own mansion, surrounded by his own security, he was vulnerable, especially if his security was working against him. Elena stopped pacing and pulled out her burner phone. She dialed Graham's number. He answered immediately. Rebecca called you? Yes. Graham, we need to get into that mansion. Absolutely not. Listen to me, Elena interrupted. Sierra and Cole are planning something, and it's happening soon. We need to know what they're planning, and the only way to find out is to get access to Sierra's room, her phone, her computer, something that will tell us their timeline. That's suicide, Graham said flatly. Even with most of the security at the charity event, there are still guards on the property. You'd never make it inside. I would, if I had help. If Rebecca could create a distraction, no. Graham's voice was firm. Elena, I understand you're frustrated, but breaking into Damien's mansion is not an option. It's too dangerous and too likely to get you killed. Then what do you suggest? Elena demanded. We just wait for Sierra and Cole to murder Damien and take over his empire? We gather the DNA evidence, we build our legal case, and we expose them publicly before they can act. That's the plan. And it's the only plan that doesn't end with you in a morgue. Elena wanted to scream, to throw the phone, to do something with the helpless rage that was burning through her. I can't just sit here, she said, her voice breaking. I can't just hide and wait and hope we're fast enough. I know, Graham said, his voice gentler now. I know this is hard, but you hired me because you trusted my judgment, at least a little bit. So trust me now when I tell you that patience is our best weapon. Let Rebecca get the DNA sample. Let me continue building the legal case. Let the evidence accumulate until we have enough to bury all of them. And what if we're too late? What if Damien ends up dead before we can expose them? Then we expose them anyway, Graham said. We prove that Sierra and Cole conspired to defraud Damien, that they committed paternity fraud, that they planned his murder. They'll go to prison, and you'll still get your justice. It's not the same, Elena said quietly. I wanted to see his face when the truth came out. Wanted him to know that I was the one who destroyed him. I know. But sometimes we don't get the satisfaction we want. Sometimes we just have to settle for winning. Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. Graham was right. She knew he was right. Breaking into the mansion was reckless and stupid and would probably get her killed, but the waiting was eating her alive. 3 days, she said. You said the baby has an appointment in 3 days. Yes. So in 3 days, we'll have DNA evidence. And then what's the timeline for results? The lab can expedite it, 5 to 7 days for definitive results. So 10 days total, maximum. Give or take, why? Because I need a number, Elena said. I need to know how long I have to wait before this is over. 10 days. I can survive 10 days. Elena, just promise me that in 10 days we'll have enough to go public. Promise me that we'll expose them and this nightmare will be over. Graham hesitated, and in that hesitation, Elena heard all the uncertainty and risk and danger that he was trying to protect her from. I can't promise that, he said finally, but I can promise that I'll do everything in my power to make it happen. That's the best I can offer. It would have to be enough. Okay, Elena said. Okay, I'll wait. I'll stay here and stay hidden and let you and Rebecca handle it. Thank you. Graham's relief was audible. I'll call you as soon as I have any updates. In the meantime, finish writing up your testimony about that night. Every detail could be important. Elena agreed and ended the call. She returned to her notes, forcing herself to focus on the task at hand. Description of the ballroom, the guest list as far as she could remember, the exact words Damien had used when he called her Barren. She was deep in the memories when she heard footsteps outside the apartment door. Heavy footsteps. Multiple people. Elena froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. The footsteps stopped directly outside her door. There was a long silence. Then a knock. 3 sharp raps that echoed through the small space like gunshots. Elena's mind raced. Rebecca had told her to stay inside, not to answer the door for anyone. But what if it was Rebecca? What if something had gone wrong and she needed help? Another knock. More insistent this time. Elena Cross! A man's voice, unfamiliar. We know you're in there. Open the door. Elena's blood turned to ice. They'd found her. Damien's people had found her. She looked around the apartment desperately, searching for an escape route. The windows were too small to climb through. The door was the only exit, and there were at least 2 men on the other side of it. We don't want to hurt you, the voice continued. Mr. Blackwell just wants to talk. He sent us to bring you home safely. Home. As if that mansion had ever been her home. Elena grabbed her coat and her phone and the medical document, shoving them into her pockets with shaking hands. Elena, don't make this difficult. Open the door, and we can all avoid unnecessary unpleasantness. The door handle rattled. They were testing it, checking if it was locked. Of course it was locked, but locks wouldn't stop them for long. Elena looked at the bathroom door. It had a small window high up near the ceiling. Maybe just big enough for someone desperate enough. She ran to the bathroom and locked the door behind her, knowing it would buy her maybe 30 seconds. From the main room, she heard the apartment door crash open. Elena Cross, don't run. This will be easier if you cooperate. Elena climbed onto the toilet and reached for the window, her fingers scrabbling at the latch. It was stuck. painted shut or rusted or both. Footsteps approached the bathroom door. "Come out, Mrs. Blackwell. Mr. Blackwell is waiting." Elena pulled harder at the window latch, desperation giving her strength. It gave way suddenly, and the window swung open. The bathroom door exploded inward, the lock giving way under a heavy kick. Elena didn't look back. She grabbed the window frame and pulled herself up, squeezing through the narrow opening even as hands grabbed at her legs. She kicked hard, felt her foot connect with something solid, heard a grunt of pain. Then she was through, tumbling out onto the frozen ground of the narrow alley behind the building. She ran. Behind her she heard shouting, the sounds of pursuit. Elena ran without thinking, without planning, just pure animal instinct driving her forward. Through alleys, across streets, around corners. Her lungs burned and her legs screamed, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Because if they caught her, if Damien's men brought her back to that mansion, everything was over. The evidence she'd gathered, the case they were building, her one chance at justice, all of it would die with her. So she ran through the December cold, and she didn't look back. Elena's feet pounded against frozen pavement until her lungs felt like they would burst. She didn't know where she was running, only that she had to keep moving, had to put distance between herself and the men who'd found her safe house. The December wind cut through her coat like knives, but the cold was nothing compared to the fear pumping through her veins. She ducked into a crowded L station, pushing past commuters with mumbled apologies, and jumped onto the first train that arrived. She stayed on for 3 stops, then got off and immediately boarded another train going in the opposite direction. Everything Rebecca had told her about evading pursuit came flooding back. Change directions, use crowds, never follow a predictable pattern. It was only when she was on the 3rd train, headed north toward Rogers Park, that she allowed herself to check her phone. 12 missed calls from Graham, 3 from Rebecca. Elena's hands were shaking so badly she could barely dial Graham's number. He answered before the first ring finished. "Where are you? Are you safe?" "I don't know where I am," Elena gasped, still trying to catch her breath. "They found me, Graham. They found the apartment. I barely got out." "Who found you?" "Damien's men. They said he wanted to talk to me, wanted to bring me home." She laughed, a sound edged with hysteria. "Like I'd ever go back there willingly." "Listen to me very carefully," Graham said, his voice tight with urgency. "Where are you right now?" "Specifically." Elena looked out the train window at the station signs blurring past. "On the red line, heading north. I've been switching trains, trying to lose them." "Good. That's good." She could hear Graham moving, gathering things. "Get off at Morse. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks east of the station called The Grind. Go there, order something, sit in the back corner. Rebecca and I will come get you." "How did they find me?" Elena asked, her voice breaking. "The apartment was supposed to be safe." "I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out." Graham paused. "Elena, I need you to stay calm and stay in public places. Don't go anywhere isolated. Damien's people won't make a scene in front of witnesses." "Okay," Elena whispered. "Okay." She ended the call and slumped against the train window, watching the city slide past. Her reflection in the glass looked like a ghost, pale, hollow-eyed, barely there. The train pulled into Morse Station 15 minutes later. Elena forced herself to stand on shaking legs and exit with the small crowd of passengers. She walked the 2 blocks to the coffee shop, checking over her shoulder constantly, seeing potential threats in every face. The Grind was warm and bright and blessedly ordinary. Elena ordered a coffee she didn't want with money she couldn't spare, and found a table in the back corner where she could see the door. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup and tried to stop shaking. 20 minutes later, Graham and Rebecca walked through the door together. Graham looked like he'd aged 10 years since Elena had last seen him, his face drawn with worry and exhaustion. Rebecca was all business, her sharp eyes scanning the coffee shop for threats before she allowed herself to approach Elena's table. "You okay?" Rebecca asked, sliding into the seat across from her. "No," Elena said honestly. "I'm really not." Graham sat down next to Rebecca, his expression grim. "Tell us exactly what happened. Everything." Elena recounted the evening, the footsteps outside the door, the knocking, the voice demanding she open up, the way she'd escaped through the bathroom window and run without looking back. "You're sure they said Damien sent them?" Graham asked. "They called me Mrs. Blackwell. They said he wanted to talk to me. Elena took a shaky sip of coffee. How did they find me? I was so careful. Rebecca and Graham exchanged a look that made Elena's stomach drop. What? She demanded. What aren't you telling me? We think there might be a leak, Rebecca said carefully. Someone who knows about our investigation and is feeding information to Damien. Elena felt the world tilt. Who? We don't know yet, but the safe house location was only known to a handful of people. Me, Graham, and the landlord who rents that property. Unless Damien's people got incredibly lucky with their search pattern, someone told them where to look. The landlord, Elena said. Could Damien have gotten to them? Possibly. Betty's been reliable in the past, but everyone has a price. Rebecca drummed her fingers on the table, thinking. Or it could be someone in Graham's office, someone monitoring his communications. I don't have staff, Graham said. Just me and an answering service. Then how? Elena asked, desperation creeping into her voice. How did they find me? Your phone, Rebecca said suddenly. The burner phone. Did you buy it yourself? Yes, from a convenience store in Pilsen. I paid cash, used a fake name. But you've been calling Graham and me on it, right? Multiple times. Elena nodded slowly, understanding dawning. You think they're tracking the calls somehow? If Damien has the right connections, and he definitely does, he could have someone monitoring phone networks for patterns. Calls to Graham's number, especially from burner phones, would stand out. Rebecca swore under her breath. I should have thought of that. Should have set up a more secure communication system. It's not your fault, Graham said. We've all been operating under pressure, making decisions quickly. Mistakes happen. Mistakes like this get people killed, Rebecca shot back. She turned to Elena. The phone you have now is compromised. We need to assume they can track it. Turn it off immediately. Elena pulled out the burner phone and powered it down with shaking fingers. From now on, we communicate through dead drops and in-person meetings only, Rebecca continued. No phones, no digital communication, nothing they can intercept or trace. That's going to make coordination difficult, Graham said. Difficult is better than dead. Rebecca's expression was hard. They found her once. They'll find her again if we're not more careful. Elena felt the weight of her new reality settling over her like a burial shroud. No phone? No safe house? Nowhere to hide that wouldn't eventually be discovered. What do I do now? She asked quietly. Where do I go? Graham and Rebecca looked at each other again, and Elena saw the answer in their faces before they spoke. You need to disappear completely, Graham said. Leave Chicago. Go somewhere Damien can't find you. Wait until we've gathered enough evidence to go public, then— No! Elena's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. I'm not running away. I'm not letting him chase me out of my own city. Elena, be reasonable. I am being reasonable, Elena interrupted. If I leave now, I'll be running forever. Damien doesn't forgive, he doesn't forget. The only way this ends is if we destroy him first. If I run, we lose our chance. If you stay, you might lose your life, Rebecca pointed out. Then I lose it fighting. Elena met their eyes steadily. I'm not backing down, not now, not when we're this close. Graham rubbed his face with both hands, exhaustion and frustration warring in his expression. You're impossibly stubborn, you know that? I learned from my husband, Elena said bitterly. So what's our next move? How do we get the DNA evidence and expose all of them before Damien finds me again? Rebecca leaned forward, her voice low. The baby's appointment is tomorrow. My contact at the medical office confirmed she can get us a sample during the routine checkup. But there's a complication. What kind of complication? Damien's increased security around Sierra and the baby. After you ran, he's paranoid that someone might try to use them against him. My contact says there will be at least 2 bodyguards in the exam room during the appointment. Can she still get the sample? Elena asked. She thinks so. She's planning to take an extra swab during the standard testing, label it incorrectly, and hand it off to me after her shift. But if the guards are watching too closely, if they get suspicious at all, the whole thing falls apart. And if it falls apart, we lose our only chance at DNA evidence, Graham added. Without that, all we have is medical records showing Damien can't be the father. It's damning, but not definitive. A good lawyer could argue the records are old or falsified, or that Damien underwent some kind of treatment that restored his fertility. Elena thought about the medical document still in her pocket, the proof she'd been carrying like a talisman. It had seemed like such a powerful weapon at first. Now it felt fragile, insufficient. "We need more than the DNA," she said slowly. "We need Sierra or Cole to confess. Or Marcus. We need one of them to admit on record what they've done." "Getting a confession would require getting close to them," Rebecca said, "which means risking exposure." "What if I did it?" Elena asked. The idea was forming even as she spoke it aloud. "What if I confronted Sierra directly? Got her to admit the baby isn't Damien's?" "Absolutely not," Graham said immediately. "Elena, that's—" "Hear me out," Elena interrupted. "Sierra thinks I'm broken, remember? Too damaged to be a threat. What if I played into that? What if I showed up at the mansion, told her I want my mother's locket back, begged for it like a pathetic ex-wife? Get her talking, get her comfortable, get her to slip up." "You'd need to record it," Rebecca said, her expression thoughtful despite Graham's obvious objections. "Audio recording that could be used as evidence." "I could wear a wire," Elena said. "You could get killed," Graham countered. "The moment you step onto that property, you're in Damien's territory. He could have you arrested for trespassing, or worse." "Not if I'm there as his invited guest," Elena turned to Rebecca. "You said Damien's been looking for me, right? His men tried to bring me back for a conversation." "Yes, but—" "So I give him what he wants. I call, say I'm ready to talk, ask to meet at the mansion to discuss the divorce settlement. Damien's ego won't let him refuse. He'll want the satisfaction of having me come crawling back. And while you're there, you try to get Sierra alone?" Rebecca was following the logic now. "It's risky, but it could work." "It's insane," Graham said flatly. "You'd be walking into a trap." "Maybe," Elena agreed, "but it's a trap I'd be setting, not Damien. I'd control the timing, the approach, the conversation. And if Rebecca can position herself nearby with backup, I can't guarantee I could get you out if things go wrong," Rebecca warned. "The mansion security is too tight." "Then I'll have to make sure things don't go wrong." Elena felt a strange calm settling over her. This was right. This was the move she needed to make. "Tomorrow, while Sierra's at the baby's appointment, I go to the mansion. I talk to Damien, play the apologetic ex-wife, ask for my locket back. Get him to lower his guard. And then?" Graham asked. "And then I find a way to talk to Sierra, woman to woman, make her think I'm broken and desperate. Get her to brag about how she won, how she took everything from me. People love to gloat when they think they've beaten someone." Rebecca nodded slowly. "It could work, if you can sell the performance, if you can make them believe you're defeated." "I spent 5 years pretending to be what Damien wanted," Elena said. "I think I can manage one more performance." Graham shook his head, but Elena could see him wavering. "If we do this, and I'm not saying we should, we'd need safeguards, multiple backup plans, exit strategies." "I'll handle the logistics," Rebecca said. "Wire her with audio recording equipment, position myself as close to the property as possible, maintain communication through an earpiece." "No earpiece," Elena said. "If they pat me down or scan for electronics, it would give everything away. Just the audio recorder, something small enough to hide." "That means you'd be going in completely alone," Rebecca said. "No way for us to warn you if something goes wrong." "I know." Elena's hands were steady now, her voice certain. "But it's the only way Damien will believe I'm really there to surrender. If I show up with obvious backup or communication devices, he'll know something's off." Graham was silent for a long moment, his fingers steepled in front of his face the way they always were when he was thinking through legal complications. Finally, he said, "If we're doing this, we do it right. Elena wears a recording device that's completely undetectable. Rebecca positions herself with a clear line of sight to the mansion exits. I prepare legal documentation, restraining orders, emergency motions, everything we might need if this goes sideways." "And the DNA sample from the baby's appointment?" Elena asked. "My contact handles that separately," Rebecca said. "If she's successful, we'll have results in 5 to 7 days. Combined with whatever you manage to record at the mansion, we should have enough to go public." 5 to 7 days, Elena repeated. "So this all comes to a head within the week." "One way or another," Graham agreed grimly. Either we expose Damien and bring down his entire house of lies, or we fail and probably die, Elena finished. I know, but at least we'll have tried. At least I'll have fought back instead of just disappearing like he wanted me to. Rebecca stood. I need to make some calls, get the recording equipment set up. Can you two stay here for another hour? We'll be here, Graham said. Rebecca left, and Elena and Graham sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what they were planning settling between them. You don't have to do this, Graham said quietly. We could still get you out of Chicago. New identity, fresh start. Somewhere Damien would never think to look. And spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I'd been braver? Elena shook her head. No, I'm done running. I'm done being the victim in this story. You were never just a victim, Graham said. Even when Damien was destroying you, even when everyone else had written you off as another trophy wife who didn't matter, you kept that medical document. Some part of you knew you'd need it someday. Some part of you was already planning to fight back. Elena thought about that. About the woman she'd been 3 years ago when she'd found those records. She'd been so desperate then, so hopeless. But she'd still hidden that document away, still protected that small piece of dangerous truth. I didn't know I was planning anything, she admitted. I just knew I needed to keep it safe. That's the same thing, Graham said. Survival instinct. The part of you that refused to give up completely, even when giving up would have been easier. Nothing about the last 5 years was easy, Elena said softly. No, but you survived them. And now you're going to do more than survive. You're going to win. Elena wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that this plan would work. That she could walk into Damien's mansion and walk back out with the evidence they needed. But she'd learned the hard way that wanting something didn't make it true. All she could do was try. All she could do was fight. Rebecca returned an hour later with a small black bag. She led Elena to the coffee shop's single-occupancy restroom and locked the door behind them. This is a professional-grade recording device, Rebecca explained, pulling out what looked like a small button. It clips inside your clothing, completely invisible. The microphone is sensitive enough to pick up conversations from 15 feet away, and the battery lasts 6 hours. How do I turn it on? You don't? It's voice-activated. As soon as you start talking, it starts recording. Rebecca demonstrated the clip mechanism. Where do you want to wear it? Elena thought for a moment, then pointed to the inside of her coat collar. There, hidden, but with a clear line to my voice. Rebecca attached the device carefully, then had Elena speak a few test sentences while she monitored the recording quality on a small receiver. Perfect, Rebecca said, satisfied. Now, the plan. You call Damien tomorrow morning, say you want to meet to discuss the divorce. He'll probably suggest his lawyer's office or some neutral location. You insist on the mansion, say you want to get your personal things, that you'll be more comfortable in familiar surroundings. Will he buy that? Elena asked. His ego will. Damien wants you back in that mansion, wants you to see what you've lost. He'll agree. Rebecca's expression turned serious. Once you're inside, you need to stay calm. Don't rush. Let Damien talk. Let him think he's in control. When the opportunity comes to talk to Sierra, take it naturally. Don't force it. And if I can't get her alone? Then you get what you can from Damien and leave. We'll find another way. Rebecca gripped Elena's shoulders. The most important thing is that you get out safely. The evidence means nothing if you're dead. Elena nodded, trying to memorize every detail of the plan. They returned to the table where Graham was waiting. He'd been making notes on a legal pad, preparing for every contingency he could imagine. I've drafted an emergency motion for a protective order, he said, showing Elena the document. If anything happens to you at that mansion, if you disappear or get hurt, this goes immediately to a judge I trust. It details everything we know about Damien, the paternity fraud, the threats against you. It won't be enough to convict him, but it'll be enough to start an official investigation. So if I die, at least Damien goes down with me, Elena said. That's not funny, Graham said. I'm not joking. Elena took the legal pad and read through his notes. This is good. Thorough. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when this is over and you're still alive. They spent another hour going over details, backup plans, emergency protocols. By the time they finished, it was nearly midnight and the coffee shop was preparing to close. Where are you going to stay tonight? Rebecca asked. You can't go back to any place Damien might know about. I have somewhere, Elena said. It was a lie. But she couldn't bear the thought of being anyone's burden right now. She needed to be alone, needed to prepare herself mentally for what she was about to do. Rebecca clearly didn't believe her, but she didn't push. "Call me tomorrow after you've spoken to Damien. Use a payphone, not your cell. Let me know the timing so I can get into position." "I will." They left the coffee shop together, stepping out into the December cold. Graham and Rebecca walked to Rebecca's car while Elena headed in the opposite direction, maintaining the fiction that she had somewhere to go. She walked until she was certain they were gone, then circled back and found a 24-hour diner 3 blocks away. She ordered coffee and pie and sat in a booth, watching the hours tick by on the wall clock. At 6 a.m., the early morning shift arrived, and the diner began filling with workers grabbing breakfast before their shifts. Elena used the restroom to wash her face and try to make herself presentable. At 8 a.m., she found a payphone outside a convenience store and dialed the number she'd never forgotten, the one that had been programmed into every phone she'd owned for 5 years. Damien's private line. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice sharp with irritation. "Who is this?" "It's me," Elena said quietly. "It's Elena." There was a pause. Then Damien's voice changed, became smooth and controlled. "Elena, I've been looking for you. I know, your men found me yesterday. Yes, I was disappointed when they returned without you. We need to talk." "That's why I'm calling." Elena forced herself to sound defeated, broken. "I want to meet, to discuss the divorce, my things. I want my mother's locket back, Damien, please." Another pause. She could practically hear him smiling. "Of course," he said. "Come to the mansion this afternoon, 2 o'clock. We'll settle everything like civilized adults." "Just you and me?" Elena asked. "No lawyers, no witnesses?" "If that's what you prefer. This should be a private conversation between husband and wife." "Ex-wife," Elena corrected softly. "Not yet," Damien said. "The papers haven't been filed. You're still Mrs. Blackwell, still mine." The possessiveness in his voice made Elena's skin crawl, but she kept her tone neutral. 2 o'clock. I'll be there." "I look forward to it," Damien said, and ended the call. Elena hung up the phone and leaned against the convenience store wall, her legs shaking. It was done. She'd set the trap. Now all she had to do was walk into it and hope she could walk back out. She found another payphone and called Rebecca's number. "It's done," Elena said. 2 o'clock at the mansion. "I'll be in position by 1, Rebecca promised. "Elena, remember, get what you can and get out. Don't take unnecessary risks." "I won't. And if anything feels wrong, if you sense danger at all, you run. Forget the evidence, forget the plan, just get out." "Okay." "I mean it. Your life is worth more than revenge." Elena wasn't sure she believed that anymore, but she said, "I understand." She spent the rest of the morning walking through the city, trying to clear her mind and prepare herself. She thought about everything Damien had taken from her dignity, her autonomy, her sense of self. She thought about her mother's locket, the last piece of her family that she'd never see again unless she faced the man who'd stolen it. She thought about Sierra in her white dress, holding a baby that wasn't Damien's, smiling with the confidence of someone who thought they'd won. And she thought about the recording device hidden in her coat collar, the small piece of technology that might finally give her the weapon she needed. At 1:30, Elena took a bus to within 3 blocks of the mansion. She walked the rest of the way, her heart hammering against her ribs with every step. The gates were open when she arrived, as if Damien had been expecting her, as if he'd been waiting. Elena stood outside those gates for a long moment, looking up at the mansion that had been her prison for 5 years. It looked exactly the same, imposing, elegant, cold. She touched the recording device hidden in her collar, took a deep breath, and walked through the gates. Whatever happened next, whatever price she had to pay, at least she was choosing it. At least she was fighting back. At least, for the first time in 5 years, she was the one setting the terms. The front door opened before she reached it. Marcus Chen stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Blackwell," he said, "Mr. Blackwell is waiting for you in his study." Elena walked past him into the house, and the door closed behind her with the finality of a cell door locking. There was no going back now, only forward, into whatever came next. The mansion felt different now that Elena was walking through it by choice rather than obligation. Every room she passed held memories she'd tried to bury, The dining room where she'd eaten countless silent meals alone. The sitting room where she'd waited for Damien to come home from business, he never explained. The grand staircase where she'd been humiliated in front of everyone just days ago. Marcus led her through the familiar corridors without speaking, his footsteps echoing on marble floors. Elena studied the back of his head, thinking about Rebecca's photos, about him visiting Sierra in the West Wing when Damien was away. Did he know she knew? Did he suspect she was here for anything other than surrender? They reached Damien's study, and Marcus knocked once before opening the door. "Mrs. Blackwell," he announced, then stepped aside. Elena walked into the study, and the door closed behind her with a soft click. Damien sat behind his massive mahogany desk, a king in his castle. He looked exactly as he always did, perfectly tailored suit, hair immaculate, expression controlled. But there was something in his eyes that Elena had never seen before, something almost like relief. "Elena," he said, standing, "you came." "You knew I would," Elena replied, keeping her voice soft and defeated. "You have something I need." "Your mother's locket." Damien walked around the desk, studying her. "You look terrible. Where have you been staying?" "Does it matter?" "It matters to me. You're still my wife." He gestured to a chair. "Sit, please." Elena sat, every muscle in her body tense despite her effort to appear relaxed. The recording device against her collar felt like it was burning through her skin, surely visible, surely obvious. But Damien showed no sign of suspicion. He returned to his chair and poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a decanter on his desk. "I don't want a drink," Elena said. "Humor me." Damien slid 1 glass across the desk toward her. "We used to do this, remember? Share a drink and talk about our days, before everything became so complicated." Elena almost laughed. They'd never shared drinks and talked. Damien had drunk alone in his study while Elena sat in her room, invisible and irrelevant. But she picked up the glass. "Before things got complicated." "You mean before you brought your mistress to live in our home?" "Sierra was never meant to hurt you," Damien said, and he actually sounded sincere. "She was just supposed to give me what you couldn't. A child." The words tasted like ash. "An heir, legacy, someone to continue what I've built." Damien took a drink, watching her over the rim of his glass. "You have to understand, Elena. Everything I've done, everything I've built, it needs to go to someone. It can't die with me." "So you replaced me with a younger model and claimed her baby as your own." Elena let some of her real bitterness show through. "Very efficient." "It wasn't personal. You humiliated me in front of everyone." Elena's voice rose, and she didn't have to fake the emotion. "You called me Barren. You paraded her and that baby like trophies. How is that not personal?" Damien had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I handled it poorly. I know that. But Elena, you have to see the larger picture. I needed an heir. You couldn't provide one. Sierra could. It's simple business." "Business?" Elena repeated. "Is that what our marriage was to you? A business arrangement that stopped being profitable?" "Don't put words in my mouth." Damien's voice hardened slightly. "I cared about you. In my way. Your way involved separate bedrooms and years of silence. My way involved keeping you safe, protected. Do you have any idea how dangerous my world is? I kept you separate from it deliberately, kept you clean." Elena almost believed he thought that was love. That isolation and control could be mistaken for protection. "I want my mother's locket," she said, redirecting the conversation. "That's why I came. Not to rehash our failed marriage. I want what's mine, and then I'll sign whatever divorce papers you put in front of me." Damien leaned back in his chair, studying her with those dark, oil-slick eyes. "What if I don't want a divorce?" Elena's heart stuttered. "What?" "What if I want you to stay, come back home properly, be my wife again?" "You have Sierra," Elena said carefully, "and your son. Sierra is the mother of my child. You're my wife. There's a difference." Damien stood and walked to the window, looking out at the grounds. "I've been thinking about this since you left, about what I lost when I sent you away. You understood me, Elena. You knew how to navigate my world without asking questions, without making demands." "I was a ghost in this house," Elena said quietly. You were peaceful, stable. I didn't appreciate that until you were gone." He turned back to face her. "Sierra is exhausting, constantly wanting attention, reassurance, things. She doesn't understand that some parts of my life need to remain private." Elena saw her opening. "She seems very devoted to Dante, though. I saw how she looked at him that night." "Every mother loves her child," Damien said dismissively. "But she's young. She doesn't understand the responsibilities that come with being connected to someone like me. Does she know about your business? The parts you kept from me?" Damien's expression shifted, became guarded. "Why are you asking about Sierra?" "I'm trying to understand," Elena said, keeping her voice gentle. "Trying to understand what she has that I didn't. Besides fertility, obviously." The barb landed. Damien's jaw tightened. "She has youth, malleability. She doesn't question me." "Neither did I," Elena pointed out. "No, but you judged me. I could see it in your eyes every time I came home late, every time I had to cancel plans, every time someone called in the middle of the night." Damien returned to his desk. "Sierra doesn't judge. She accepts what I am." "Does she?" Elena asked. "Does she really accept all of it? Or does she just pretend better than I did?" "What are you implying?" Elena took a sip of the whiskey, letting the burn steady her nerves. "I'm not implying anything. I just know that young women like Sierra are often very good at seeming accepting while planning their own futures." "You sound jealous," Damien observed. "Maybe I am. She has everything I wanted. Your attention, a child, security." Elena set down her glass. "Does she have my mother's locket too? Is that one of the things you gave her?" "The locket is in my safe," Damien said. "I kept it because I thought you might come back for it eventually. I was right. Can I have it, please?" Elena let her voice break slightly. "It's all I have left of her." Damien watched her for a long moment, and Elena held her breath, waiting. Finally, he stood and walked to a painting on the wall, a dark landscape that Elena had always hated. He swung it aside, revealing a wall safe. His body blocked the combination as he entered it, but Elena heard the click of it opening. He reached inside and pulled out a small velvet box. Elena's heart clenched. She recognized that box, had kept it on her dresser for years until one day it simply disappeared. Damien opened it and held up the silver locket. It caught the light, worn and tarnished, but infinitely precious. "Come here," Damien said. Elena stood and walked to him on shaking legs. He gestured for her to turn around, and she did, feeling his hands at her neck as he fastened the locket's chain. "There," he said softly, his breath against her ear. "You always wore it better than anyone." Elena touched the locket, feeling its familiar weight against her chest. Tears burned her eyes, real ones this time, because this small piece of metal was the only thing connecting her to her mother, to the life she'd had before Damien. "Thank you," she whispered. "Does this mean you'll consider coming back?" Damien asked. "Really consider it?" Before Elena could answer, there was a knock at the door. Damien frowned. "I said I wasn't to be disturbed." The door opened anyway, and Sierra Vale walked in, holding baby Dante. She froze when she saw Elena, her blue eyes widening with surprise that quickly shifted to something harder. "I didn't know we had company," Sierra said, her voice carrying a note of accusation. "Mrs. Blackwell came to retrieve some personal items," Damien said coolly. "What do you need, Sierra?" "Dante has a fever. I wanted to ask if I should call the pediatrician." Sierra's gaze fixed on Elena, assessing, calculating. "But I can come back later if you're busy with your ex-wife." "She's still my wife," Damien corrected. "And yes, call the pediatrician if you're concerned. That's what we pay him for." Sierra's lips thinned. "Of course. I'll leave you two to your reunion then." She turned to go, and Elena saw her chance slipping away. The recording device was capturing all of this, but she needed more. Needed Sierra to say something incriminating. "Wait," Elena said. "Can I see him, the baby?" Sierra's expression shifted to confusion. "Why?" "Because I've never really seen him up close. That night, everything happened so fast." Elena approached slowly, keeping her body language non-threatening. "He's beautiful. You must be very proud." Sierra relaxed fractionally, maternal pride overriding suspicion. "He is beautiful. Perfect, really. Damien's genes, obviously." Elena looked down at the sleeping infant in Sierra's arms. He was beautiful, in the way all babies were, innocent and unaware of the lies and schemes surrounding his existence. "He has your eyes," Elena said softly, "and your coloring." "But Damien's bone structure," Sierra insisted. "The doctors said so." "Did they?" Elena kept her voice casual. "Did you have genetic testing done?" "Of course," Sierra said quickly. Too quickly. Damien insisted on it. Damien, who had returned to his desk, looked up sharply. "I never insisted on genetic testing." Sierra paled. "I meant you talked about it, about wanting to confirm everything was healthy." "That's not the same thing as paternity testing," Damien said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "Why would you bring up genetic testing, Sierra?" "I just assumed," Sierra stammered, shifting Dante in her arms. "I thought all fathers wanted to be certain." "Certain of what?" Damien stood slowly, the air in the room suddenly crackling with tension. "Sierra, is there something you need to tell me?" Elena watched Sierra's face cycle through panic, calculation, and finally defiance. This was the moment. This was when it would all break open. "There's nothing to tell," Sierra said, lifting her chin. "Dante is your son. I've told you that from the beginning." "But you just suggested I should have done paternity testing," Damien said, his voice soft and lethal. "Why would you suggest that if you were certain the child was mine?" "I didn't suggest it. Elena brought it up, trying to plant doubt." "I asked if you'd had genetic testing done," Elena interrupted. "For health reasons. You're the one who immediately jumped to paternity." Damien's eyes were fixed on Sierra now, dark and cold. "How many men have you been with, Sierra?" "Just you," Sierra said, but her voice wavered. "Don't lie to me." Damien's voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than shouting. "I can smell lies, and you reek of them." Sierra took a step backward, clutching Dante tighter. "I'm not lying. Dante is yours. He has to be." "Has to be?" Damien repeated. "Interesting choice of words." The study door opened again, and Marcus Chen stepped inside. "Sir, I heard voices." He stopped when he saw the tableau. Damien radiating cold fury, Sierra backing toward the wall with the baby, Elena standing between them. "Marcus," Damien said without looking away from Sierra, "how many times have you visited the West Wing in the past 3 months?" Marcus's face went carefully blank. "For security checks, sir. Standard protocol." "I don't recall authorizing increased security in that wing." Damien's voice was still that terrible whisper. "I don't recall requesting any additional checks beyond the normal rotations. I was being thorough. You were sleeping with her. It wasn't a question. You've been sleeping with my mistress." Marcus didn't deny it. His hand moved slightly toward the weapon Elena knew he carried under his jacket. "Don't," Damien said quietly. "Don't make this worse than it already is." "Damien, please," Sierra said, tears streaming down her face now. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" Damien turned back to her. "Explain how you've been whoring yourself out to my own security team? Explain how you tried to pass off another man's bastard as my heir? It might still be yours. I can't have children." The words exploded out of Damien like a gunshot, echoing in the sudden silence. "I'm sterile, Sierra. Have been for years. So that baby you're holding can't possibly be mine." Sierra's face crumbled. "No, no, that's not. You never said—" "I never said because it's nobody's business." Damien's voice was shaking now, with rage or grief or both. "I kept it private, and you exploited it. You and Marcus both." "Not just Marcus," Elena said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Elena met Damien's eyes steadily. "There's another man, Cole Mercer, one of your bodyguards. He's been visiting Sierra, too." "You lying bitch," Sierra hissed. "You don't know anything." "I know Cole was at the West Wing 3 nights ago," Elena said. "I know he held Dante like a father holds his son. I know you've been playing multiple men, trying to figure out which one would give you the best outcome." Damien's face had gone absolutely white. He looked at Marcus. "Is Cole involved in this?" Marcus said nothing, but his silence was confirmation enough. "Get him," Damien said. "Get Cole. Bring him here. Now." Marcus hesitated, and that hesitation told Elena everything. He'd been planning to refuse, planning to reach for his gun and end this before it could spread further. But then another voice spoke from the doorway. "That won't be necessary. I'm already here." Cole Mercer stood in the entrance to the study, his weapon drawn and pointed directly at Damien. He was younger than Marcus, maybe 30, with the kind of clean-cut good looks that made people underestimate him. But there was nothing uncertain about the way he held that gun. "Nobody move," Cole said calmly. "Especially you, Marcus. I know you're armed. Put your hands where I can see them." Marcus complied slowly, raising his hands. Elena's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. This was it. The moment where everything either worked or fell apart completely. "Cole, what are you doing?" Damien asked, his voice carefully controlled despite the weapon pointed at his chest. "What I should have done months ago," Cole said. "Taking what's mine." "The baby isn't yours," Damien said. "It's not mine either, apparently, but it's not yours." "How do you know?" Cole's smile was cold. "Have you done a DNA test?" "Because I have. Paid for it myself, got the results last week. Dante is my son, not Marcus's, not yours. Mine." Sierra made a small sound, and Cole's eyes flicked to her. "You knew," he said. "You've known since the test results came back, and you've been stalling, trying to figure out how to keep your position without admitting the truth." "I was protecting us," Sierra said desperately. "Protecting our future. By letting Damien claim my son as his heir?" Cole's voice rose. "By making me watch while another man held what's mine." "It was the only way to secure everything," Sierra insisted. "Once Damien made Dante his legal heir, once the paperwork was done, we could have eliminated him and taken control. You, me, and Dante. We would have had everything." The admission hung in the air like smoke. Elena felt the recording device against her collar, capturing every word. This was it. This was the confession they needed. But she was also standing in a room with a man pointing a gun at her ex-husband, and she had no idea how this would end. Damien laughed, a sound without humor. "You were planning to kill me. My own people were planning to murder me and steal my empire." "You made us," Cole said. "You created this situation when you claimed a child that couldn't be yours. You brought this on yourself." "I claimed a child because I was lied to." Damien's voice was ice. "Because this whore told me the baby was mine, and I wanted to believe her." "Don't call her that," Cole snapped. "I'll call her whatever I want. She's a liar and a thief and apparently a conspirator in attempted murder." Damien's eyes moved to Marcus. "And you? Were you part of this plan too, or were you just convenient?" "I loved her," Marcus said quietly. "Before Cole. Before any of this. I actually loved her." "Past tense? Why?" Sierra asked, her voice breaking. "You made your choice," Marcus said. "You chose him and his plan. I'm not dying for either of you." Cole's gun swung toward Marcus. "You're the one who taught me everything. How to move through this house unseen, how to avoid the cameras, how to get close to targets. You helped create this plan." "I helped you seduce a lonely girl," Marcus said. "I didn't help you plot murder." "Liar!" Cole's hand was shaking now, and Elena realized he was coming apart. Whatever plan he and Sierra had made was disintegrating, and he was panicking. Panicking men with guns were dangerous. "Cole," Elena said carefully, "put the gun down. You have a son to think about. Dante needs his father. He needs you alive, not in prison or dead." "Stay out of this," Cole snarled. "This is between me and the man who tried to steal my legacy." "He didn't steal anything," Elena said. "He was lied to. We all were. But it's not too late to end this without anyone getting hurt." "It's already too late." Cole's voice was hollow. "The moment Damien found out the truth, it became too late. He'll kill us all now. Sierra, me, maybe even Marcus for failing to protect him." "I should," Damien agreed. "I should put all of you in the ground for this betrayal." "Then do it," Cole challenged. "Go ahead. Call your other men. Have them execute us right here. Show your ex-wife what kind of monster you really are." Damien's eyes flicked to Elena, and for the first time she saw something that might have been shame. "I'm not a monster," he said quietly. "You've killed people," Elena said. "Don't pretend otherwise. I've always known what you are, Damien. I just didn't say it out loud." "And yet you came back," Damien said. "Why, Elena? Really, why?" It wasn't just for a locket. Elena touched the silver chain at her throat, feeling the weight of her mother's memory and the recording device capturing every word. I came back for the truth, she said. I came back to see you face what you've done. To watch your perfect heir, your perfect legacy, revealed as a lie. Damien's expression shifted, understanding dawning. You knew. You've known all along that the baby couldn't be mine. I've known for 3 years that you're sterile, Elena confirmed. I found your medical records, kept them, waited for the right moment to use them. And this is that moment? Damien's laugh was bitter. With one of my own men holding a gun on me, my mistress revealed as a fraud, my so-called heir actually belonging to someone else? This is your revenge? It's justice, Elena corrected. You took everything from me. I'm just returning the favor. Cole's gun swung back and forth between Damien and Elena, his desperation growing. Shut up. Both of you shut up. I need to think. There's nothing to think about, Marcus said. It's over, Cole. Put the gun down before you make this worse. Worse? How could this possibly get worse? Cole's voice cracked. My son is going to grow up knowing his mother tried to pass him off as someone else's child. I'll lose everything. You'll lose more if you pull that trigger, Elena said. If you kill Damien, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. Dante will grow up without a father. Is that what you want? I want what's mine, Cole shouted. And then several things happened at once. The study door burst open and 3 men in suits rushed in. Damien's backup security team, alerted by the shouting. Cole spun toward them, his gun rising. Marcus lunged forward, trying to disarm him. Sierra screamed, clutching Dante tighter. A gunshot exploded in the confined space, deafening. For a moment, Elena couldn't tell who'd been hit. Everyone was frozen, waiting. Then Marcus staggered backward, blood blooming across his white shirt. Cole looked down at the gun in his hand, horrified. I didn't mean... The security team swarmed him, tackling him to the ground and wrestling the weapon away. Sierra was sobbing, pressing herself into the corner with the baby, and Marcus slid down the wall, leaving a red streak, his hand pressed to the wound in his side. Get medical, Damien barked at one of the security team. And get the police. All of them. I want everyone involved in this arrested. Elena ran to Marcus, pressing her hands over his to try to stop the bleeding. Hold on! Help is coming. Marcus looked up at her, his face pale. Why are you helping me? I helped destroy you. You were kind to me once, Elena said. That has to count for something. It doesn't count for much, Marcus said, his voice growing weaker. I'm sorry, for all of it. You deserved better. So did you, Elena said softly. The next hour was chaos. Paramedics arrived and stabilized Marcus before rushing him to the hospital. Police flooded the mansion, separating everyone for questioning. Cole was arrested immediately, still in shock over what he'd done. Sierra was taken away by social services along with baby Dante. Both of them headed for protective custody while the legal situation sorted itself out. Through it all, Elena sat in Damien's study, giving her statement to a detective while the recording device against her collar continued capturing everything. She told them about the medical records proving Damien's sterility, about Sierra's confession that she'd been planning to murder Damien after establishing Dante as his heir, about Cole's admission of paternity and Marcus's involvement in the deception. The detective listened with growing astonishment, occasionally stopping to verify details. When Elena finished, the detective closed her notebook and looked at Elena seriously. Mrs. Blackwell, you're aware that returning to this property while there was an active threat could have gotten you killed? I'm aware, Elena said. Why did you do it? Why take that risk? Elena touched her mother's locket. Because some things are worth the risk. The detective didn't look convinced, but she nodded. We'll need that recording device as evidence. Elena carefully removed it from her collar and handed it over. There's an attorney, Graham Pierce, who has additional documentation relevant to the case, and a private investigator, Rebecca Torres, who has photographic evidence of Sierra's relationships with both Marcus and Cole. We'll contact them. The detective stood. You're free to go, Mrs. Blackwell, but stay available. We'll likely have follow-up questions. Elena nodded and stood, her legs shaking with exhaustion and delayed fear. As she walked out of the study, she found Damien waiting in the hallway. He looked older than he had that morning, diminished somehow, despite his expensive suit and controlled expression. "Elena," he said. "Wait." She stopped but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," Damien said quietly, "for how I treated you, for what I took from you. You were right, you deserved better." Elena turned to face him. "Yes, I did. But I don't need your apology, Damien. I just needed the truth to come out. It's out now. Everyone will know that my heir was a fraud, that I was betrayed by my own people. My reputation, my legacy, it's all destroyed." "Good," Elena said simply. Damien flinched as if she'd struck him. "You really hate me that much?" "I don't hate you at all," Elena said, and realized it was true. "I pity you. You built this empire on fear and violence, and it consumed you. Everything you valued, power, control, legacy, was never real. Just illusions that people sold you because you wanted so desperately to believe in them." "And what are you left with?" Damien asked. "After destroying me, what do you have?" Elena touched her mother's locket again. "I have myself back. That's more than you ever gave me." She walked away then, down the grand staircase where she'd been humiliated, through the marble foyer that had never felt like home, out the front door and through the gates that had been her prison. Rebecca was waiting at the end of the driveway in her car. "Get in," Rebecca said, leaning across to open the passenger door. "Graham's waiting at his office with every news outlet in Chicago. We're going public in 1 hour." Elena climbed into the car, and Rebecca pulled away from the mansion. "Did you get what we needed?" Rebecca asked. "Everything," Elena said. Sierra confessed to planning Damien's murder. Cole admitted paternity and pulled a gun on Damien. It's all recorded. "Then we won," Rebecca said. "You won." Elena looked back at the mansion disappearing in the distance. Nobody won, but at least the truth is out. At Graham's office, they spent the next hour preparing for the press conference. Graham had assembled a comprehensive package of evidence: the medical records, the recording from the mansion, Rebecca's surveillance photos, even the DNA test results that had come back that morning confirming Cole as Dante's biological father. When they walked into the press room Graham had rented, it was packed with journalists, cameras, microphones. Graham spoke first, laying out the facts in clear legal language. Then he played portions of the recording, Sierra's voice admitting to conspiracy to commit murder, Cole confessing to paternity. The journalists erupted with questions. Elena stepped forward and held up her hand for quiet. "My name is Elena Cross," she said. "For 5 years, I was married to Damien Blackwell. For 5 years, I was isolated, controlled, and systematically broken down. When he decided I was no longer useful, he discarded me publicly and cruelly." She pulled out the medical records and held them up. "But he made a mistake. He built his legacy on a lie, claiming a child he knew he could never father, and that lie gave me the opening I needed to expose him." Elena set down the documents and looked directly into the cameras. "This isn't just about one powerful man's fraud. It's about the systems that protect men like Damien Blackwell while destroying the people around them. It's about refusing to accept that power and money can bury the truth forever." She touched her mother's locket. "My mother told me before she died that the truth always comes to light eventually. It just takes someone brave enough to flip the switch. Today, I'm flipping that switch. And I hope that anyone else trapped in situations like mine will know that it's possible to fight back. It's possible to win." The press conference lasted another hour, with journalists firing questions that Graham fielded with practiced skill. When it finally ended, Elena felt hollowed out, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. "You did well," Graham said as they left the building through a back entrance to avoid the remaining reporters. "Really well." "What happens now?" Elena asked. "Now the legal system takes over. Damien will face fraud charges, possibly conspiracy charges, if the DA decides to pursue the murder plot angle. Sierra and Cole will definitely face charges. The baby will become a ward of the state until custody is determined. And Marcus? If he survives the gunshot wound, he'll likely testify against the others in exchange for a reduced sentence." Graham helped Elena into Rebecca's car. "You should get some rest. The next few weeks are going to be intense." But Elena couldn't rest. Not yet. Instead, she asked Rebecca to drive her to Grant Park, to the spot where her father had taught her to ride a bicycle all those years ago. She stood at the edge of the frozen grass, looking out at the lake, and pulled out her mother's locket. She opened it carefully, looking at the tiny photographs inside. Her mother young and smiling, her father proud and strong. "I did it," she whispered. "I fought back. I won." The wind off the lake carried her words away, and Elena felt something inside her finally break loose. Tears came then, hot and cleansing, washing away 5 years of pain and humiliation and fear. When they finally stopped, Elena closed the locket and clasped it around her neck securely. She was free. Really, truly free. Not because Damien was destroyed, though that helped. Not because the truth was exposed, though that mattered, but because she'd found herself again. The woman she'd been before Damien, the woman she could be after him, strong, determined, unbroken. 6 months later, Elena stood in a small flower shop in Lincoln Park, arranging roses and baby's breath for a weekend wedding. The space was hers, purchased with the divorce settlement that Damien's lawyers had been forced to negotiate after the criminal charges made fighting it impossible. It wasn't much. Just a small storefront with good light and a steady stream of neighborhood customers. But it was hers, purchased with her own money, run according to her own decisions. The bell over the door chimed, and Elena looked up to see Graham walking in. "I come bearing news," he announced. "Good news or bad news?" Elena asked, trimming a stem. "Depends on your perspective. Damien's trial concluded yesterday. He was found guilty on multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy, 15 years minimum." Elena absorbed this quietly. "And the others?" "Cole got 20 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. Sierra took a plea deal, 5 years for fraud and conspiracy to commit murder, with the possibility of parole after 3. Marcus testified against all of them and got 3 years probation." "And the baby?" Graham's expression softened. "Cole's parents petitioned for custody. The court granted it. Dante will grow up with his biological grandparents far away from all of this." Elena nodded, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The baby hadn't asked for any of this, hadn't deserved to be used as a pawn in so many people's schemes. "How are you doing?" Graham asked. "Really?" Elena looked around her shop at the flowers she'd arranged, at the life she'd built from nothing. "I'm good," she said. "Really good. Some days are harder than others. But I wake up every morning in my own apartment, make my own decisions, live my own life. That's more than I had 6 months ago." "It's more than many people ever have," Graham agreed. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. "One more thing. This came to my office. It's addressed to you." Elena took the envelope, recognizing the handwriting immediately. Damien's. She almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 4 words. "You were always stronger." Elena read it twice, then carefully folded the letter and tucked it into her pocket. Maybe it was an apology. Maybe it was an acknowledgement. Maybe it was just Damien's final attempt to have the last word. It didn't matter. What mattered was that Elena had survived, had fought back, had won her freedom and her truth. What mattered was the sunlight streaming through her flower shop window, the smell of roses and jasmine, the sound of the bell announcing another customer. What mattered was that she'd taken the broken pieces of her life and built something new, something honest, something hers. Elena touched her mother's locket, feeling its familiar weight. The truth had come to light, exactly as her mother had promised. And Elena Cross, no longer Blackwell, never again belonging to anyone but herself, was finally, completely, gloriously free.